We're warriors, unstoppable. We feel the evil coming, and shadows all around. Danger surrounds us, but won't bring us down. We're on the edge of greatness, turning darkness to light. We're right beside you, ready to fight. We must be strong, and we must be brave. We gotta find every bit of strength that we have and never let it go. We must be strong, and we must be brave. We gotta find every bit of strength that we have and never let it go. We're bound to this struggle with mighty sword and flame. We'll never fail you when you call our name. Together we'll be heroes, joining forces as one. Strong as the steel we carry, we rise like the sun. We must be strong, and we must be brave. We gotta find every bit of strength that we have and never let it go. We must be strong. 'Cause we're warriors, we are unstoppable. Nothing's gonna get in our way. We're gonna win in the end. We must be strong, and we must be brave. We gotta find every bit of strength that we have and never let it go. We must be strong, and we must be brave. We gotta reach inside, stand together and fight and never let it go. We must be strong.
Hello and welcome to the Nerds at Large 2020 Best of Gaming episode. I'm Darby Hamill.
I'm Jeb Mayo.
I'm Jacob Hamill. I'm Will Outlaw.
So happy to be joined by all these gentlemen here once again. We've done this quite a few years in a row now, like since 2017, right? Yeah, it's been quite a few. I know, it's crazy. Time is flying by and we're all getting old. And 2020, I think, aged us about 4 years alone.
That right?
2020 was 4 years.
Yeah, I think so. But 2020, I think, had some pretty darn good video games in it, though. I think this is one of, I think this at least, like, I think is, like, on par with the previous, like, the 2017 and 2018, at least close to it to me, as far as, like, games. And there's definitely some games that came out this year that are, like, on my all-time list, for sure. What did y'all think about 2020 overall before we get in there? Or not overall, for gaming.
I mean, I think in terms of just like in the time that I was able to play games increased a lot. Since, got back from the honeymoon and didn't have to go back to work for many months. And then I had summer break. So I legit had like 5 months of time where I was able to play maybe some things that I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. So that was pretty fun for me, just looking at my list. I mean, I definitely increased my platinums this year thanks to that. So yeah, I mean, it was great in terms of just that, but also in terms of some of the games that were finally released. Last of Us Part 2 being the frontmost, at least in my mind, very exciting. So
Yep, man. A new console launch that Nerds at Large has now seen, which was fun. It was also a weird year. E3 was gone this year. Lots of other things.
I haven't seen it, but whatever.
It's pretty nice.
Maybe one day I'll see the chonker.
Yeah, I'm there with you.
Hey, you've seen one at least.
I've seen it.
Yeah, it's right in there. You
I've
passed
seen one
by
in
it.
Best Buy.
You
I've
passed
seen
by it. Yeah. I mean, yeah, Jeff's the only one that actually has it, but I have felt Astro gliding on the thing. Jeff was kind enough to let me play like 5 minutes.
You get to feel him skate on the ice.
Yeah. It is pretty cool. I think the DualSense, it's somewhere in between. It's not quite the like extravagant, crazy thing that people make it out to be, but it also is pretty darn cool. It's interesting. Yeah. Well, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into our awards for 2020. So we have a bunch of different categories. I'm pretty sure it's the same categories that we've had in the past that we all chose a game and maybe some runner-ups for. And then after we get through that, we will do our top 10. It'll be a good time. Jeffrey?
First one, favorite character.
Who wants to go first? Jeff, why don't you lead us off?
Okay. For some runners-up, just kind of real quick. My runners-up is kind of long list, but for the most part, I don't plan on talking about much. Of course.
Yeah, shout them out.
Obviously, got Makoto from Persona 5. Bae, loved her, all that kind of stuff. Liked how, compared to a lot of other party, she seemed to be in the story throughout. Ellie was great, of course, from Last of Us Part 2. Surprise. Olivia and Bobby from Paper Mario, Origami King. Very surprised how much I love these characters. They are really great. It's great moments. But favorite character, and I have to imagine, maybe not same for Darby. He has some other ones. Abby from Last of Us Part 2. Really just surprised to see how well her character was written and just what they did with her and the story. And you start hating her because of what she did, and then, with the writing and voice acting, you just learn to love her by then, potentially more than Ellie. Also, we probably should say this, for the most part, full spoilers for the games we're talking about.
Yeah, we might bob and weave sometimes, but definitely it's all on the table potential. Yeah. Jacob?
All right, so I just did one runner-up. Just decided to, put myself to the fire and just select one. Even though I think with a lot of these categories, there was some hot contention between multiple games. But for favorite character, for my runner-up, I have Nyx from Hades. I think her design is really great as a character, and she serves as an interesting foil to Hades himself in her relationship with the game's protagonist, Zagreus. But my favorite character is actually going to be Aerith from Final Fantasy VII. As a character that I did not like when I obviously I knew who Aerith was before I played Final Fantasy VII, the remake. But her characterization in the game was not what I expected from the outside looking in. And I think she's just a really strong character, especially in her relationship with Cloud. I think their on-screen chemistry is really great, and I think when she is introduced in Final Fantasy VII Remake, I think that's when the game really starts to pick up, and her character kind of drives the narrative going forward from there.
100%. And Aerith is my second runner-up, I will say. Because, and I think it's fair for the outside looking in for you to maybe be surprised about this also because ever since Final Fantasy VII, the original game, they have like the people who make Final Fantasy VII content kind of completely forgot the character that they made.
Yeah.
And they had like turned her into this like just soft, angelic, like kind of emotionless like character. When it's like, no, in the original game, she was kind of like sassy.
Scrappy.
And she was like, she could stand on her own. She kind of like didn't take shit from people. It was like she was playful in that way or whatever, and they kind of just like lost sight of that. And going into Final Fantasy VII Remake, I think that was a big fear, was are they going to use the Advent Children kind of, you know, character assassination version of these characters, or are they going to actually stay true to the original? And I think Aerith is a very good indicator of how well they handle these characters. And I went from, in the original, it's like I liked Aerith and she was cool and everything, but I went into this not really expecting to attach to her as much as I did. And like you said, she is like very integral to the story, and it really does, you know, her relationship with the whole party is very important.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways her character kind of captures the themes of Final Fantasy VII, like condensed into one character and her arc and her the position that she is in the game.
Yeah, and not to mention she's like the central character you look back at when you replay it and you see like, oh, okay, there's a lot of hints at the weird stuff that's going on here. You know, yeah,
great character.
Absolutely great. Yeah, she's my second runner-up. I'll just like briefly mention, I mean, this year was just an absolute bloodbath. There were so many amazing characters. Like, obviously, like Cloud is great. Barrett, I think, is like right under Aerith for me. Like, especially he has some like really emotional moments that are like hit really strong. And Last of Us Part 2 is filled with so many of these 13 Sentinels that just play a lot of great characters. But my number one is also Abby. Just the way that they handle that character and how that like turn from how she starts that game to like how you feel at the end, and it's like the game knows that you're not going to like her or like that you have to play her, and it's like knows that it puts you in that kind of like bummed out spot, but then like uses that, and like it's not even like one moment that happens where I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm in now. It was just like slowly over the course of the second half of that game, you just like grow more and more attached to the point where like you really actually care about her a lot. And I think it was just, and Laura Bailey, it was just a phenomenal performance all the way around. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And yeah, just listener to be noted, Will hasn't played as many games as us, so he might not jump in on every single category, but Will, anytime you want to jump in on a category, do so.
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
Yeah, go for it.
We'll give Will more time later on to talk about the games that he played.
All right. So next one is favorite cast. Talk about characters. Let's see how we feel about the group.
Mm-hmm. Also a bloodbath this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who wants to go first for this one?
We could snake it, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll go first this time then. Well, my favorite cast, I gave Last of Us the character. I'm giving Final Fantasy VII the cast. I mean, come on. It's like, this is my favorite game of all time being remade, and I think they just handled these characters incredibly well. And not to mention that I feel that cast grew so much because not just from the actual new characters, because there were new characters, but like Avalanche are basically new characters. Like that entire group had like a collective 30 lines in the original game, and then here it's like I cried about like Jesse and some of these other ones. It's like they had like actual arcs, and you like really cared about them about just as much as you did the main party. So I think just from top to bottom, the characters in that game I think were so well done and has to be my favorite. But definitely shout out Last of Us, shout out 13 Sentinels, which I'll talk about more later, and shout out to Haven. I think the two characters in Haven were also had a very good relationship. But Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I could not imagine Final Fantasy VII where you don't go to Jesse's parents' house and you see all that.
And you didn't. Yeah,
that wasn't in the original. So that's,
I've seen a lot of people say like, wait a minute, that's not in the original. It's like, no.
Yeah, you would think. It's so, I think it's such an important moment in that game. But yeah.
Yeah, 100%. That's a testament.
My runner-up for favorite cast is Hades. I think those characters in that game are absolutely great. Meeting all the characters in the dungeon itself, from Sisyphus to Patroclus and Eurydice, as well, Orpheus, and so on and so forth. The way that the game kind of reinterprets these characters that from classical Greek mythology, I think is really well done. And especially in the way that this game Hades seems to be set kind of post all those myths. So it's like, okay, well, everyone knows the story of Eurydice and Orpheus. Orpheus is trying to take Eurydice out of the underworld, and he famously looks back and she disappears back into the underworld. It's like, okay, well, Orpheus is dead now, so like what happened to them post Orpheus being a kind of a screw up and looking behind him? And I think that's I think all around, I think the game does a really good job. And also the way it interprets the Olympian gods too is also really fun. I mean, Dionysus is this kind of like swinger, like hot swinger guy at like a party. And
he's just so chill. I love it. Yeah.
Everyone thinks Ares is kind of weird because he's all about like blood and death. And it's just like, dude, just chill out.
Are all the characters in that game fully voice acted?
Yes, they are. Yeah.
'Cause I know I played Pyre this year, and I know that they were voice acted, but they had like a fake language, so it wasn't really.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was curious about that. That's cool.
Yeah, they're all voice acted, and half of them are voiced by Logan Cunningham, who has done the voice for. He did the narrator in Pyre, as well as I think the narrator also in Bastion, and then the sword in Transistor. So that guy, that guy is a phenomenal voice actor in the way that he can do so many. He does like half the characters in that game.
Okay, I knew he did Hades, but I didn't know he did a bunch of other ones in there.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I know the composer Darren Korb voices Zagreus,
which is crazy because like, did he not voice act before this?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, he's phenomenal. He's like, really good.
Yeah. But my favorite cast is actually from a game called Signs of the Sojourner.
Never even heard of it. This is why I'm so happy. I'm so excited to listen to Jacob today.
So I'll talk more about this game later on. But Signs of the Sojourner is pretty much a narrative card game where you inherit you join a caravan to go around and travel around. It's kind of post-apocalyptic, the setting, and you're conversing with people to acquire goods for your late mother's shop. And this shop is kind of the lifeline to your community. And so you're meeting tons of different people from all around, and you go on multiple trips. And so you can see these characters' arcs progress. And, there's many times in Signs of the Sojourner where you're talking to a character and it's like, man, you seem like a really cool person. I really don't want to mess this conversation up. And so, yeah, it's a really interesting game. And what's cool too about it is that I'll get more into the mechanics later, but the way it kind of expresses someone's personality in like the card mechanics. So like someone might be more forceful and direct, and so you can kind of get a feeling for how they will you can kind of almost anticipate. You get to know them and you can almost anticipate how they're going to respond in a conversation that is depicted in a card game. That's
cool. It's interesting. Yeah.
It's PC only, I guess.
Yeah, it is coming to Switch, which would be a very good platform for it, but it's right now only on the PC.
Nice. A card game winning best cast.
Yeah, so Signs of the Sojourner.
Right, so runner for mine. Got a good bit of. I'm not going to talk about for good bit of runner-ups. There's a strong year for the games I played. Final Fantasy VII, great cast. Paper Mario had a really strong cast. Xenoblade, Last of Us, obviously. Bugsnax had surprised me in a lot of ways, including that cast. I'll go into more of these in the most part later. But my favorite cast, Darby could probably figure it out by process of elimination. Persona 5 Royal.
Yeah.
It's hard to pick cast over this because a lot of the game is the characters. You spending time with this throughout the year you spend on there. Like, I played this game for 120 hours. And yeah, most of that is going around talking to these characters, experiencing their stories. And the additions to the cast from the original Persona 5, Kasumi and Maruki, are very strong characters as well and add to the story. So we're off to a very strong cast with a bunch of lovable characters.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so many awesome small moments.
Yep.
with those characters.
What's also nice is in Royal, compared from when I've talked to you guys, I was able to get through all the social stuff, or a lot more of the social stuff. I finished a lot of characters compared to you guys, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think Jacob's gotten them all, but
or at least in one playthrough.
Yeah, I did a second playthrough, and I was able to get all the confidants in the base game.
Yeah.
What was your favorite confidant?
Trying to think.
Just off the top
I'm
of your head.
blanking.
No worries about that.
So Airsoft guy's real good.
Airsoft
I didn't
Guys is
finish
really
his,
good.
unfortunately. I started that one really late, and I got about halfway through it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm blanking on her name. The teachers was surprisingly good towards the end. It started out kind of creepy, but
Yeah, I didn't pursue it anymore
yeah,
because
yeah,
of how creepy it started.
the non-romance version of it ends in a nice way, in my opinion. I don't know if that's my favorite, but
So I was planning on playing Persona whenever I get PS5 just because it's free with the collection. But, okay. Do you think it's worth getting Royal for someone who has never, ever tried anything like Persona before?
yes.
Yes.
Jacob says yes.
Especially at this point where if you really look, you can get the Royal for like $20-$30 at most.
It's the definitive version of the game. You'd just be missing out on.
Yeah, it's a lot of quality of life stuff and just a bunch of extra story
Yeah, I was
stuff.
about to say, like, it actually makes the game a lot easier. Everything that Jeff was showing me, I'm like, well, damn, if I had that, then I would have cruised right through this, you know? So
I gotcha. Okay.
yeah. And it's a pretty substantial amount of content added, but it's not just like all at the end. It's kind of interwoven.
Yeah, it kind of
with
spread
it.
out, and then it's like a 20-ish hour post-game thing.
It's. I would be very
If
interested
I
to see.
ever get there.
I'd be interested to see. I mean, I know you can get into some big like narrative stuff. Well, I think you might be surprised by how much you end up liking that game. I just,
I could see that. Yeah.
yeah, I would definitely take your time with it. It's a long game, but
Yeah. I think that's the only thing I would have a problem with, because I can get into something pretty easily and really enjoy it, and then I'm like, I kind of want to move on. And I think that one will be hard for me not to do that too.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Moving on to best setting. Guess back over to me. Got my runners up. First runner up, my PS5. By that I mean an Astro's Playroom where you are literally playing within the PS5. You start the game, you look over, you see the inside of the shell and that. Going to different things. Just a jolly time. Jolly little setting. Midgar, obviously great setting. Just a lot of stuff going on there. I think they did a really good job of expanding on Midgar, making it fit for a full game. Very excited to see what they do with
Yeah, they did all right. It was all right. It was okay.
Fusing. Snacktooth Island. Very fun
yeah.
place. Catching all them bug snacks. Just a fun place to go around, travel, and just kind of explore. Kind of gave me some Pokemon feels where you just go into a new area and just look around what's around there. Some secrets, seeing what kind of creatures you can find and all that. But my favorite setting is the Bionis and Mechonis from Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. This is just the way this game is for people who don't know. You are literally on these giants that have died at a battle like millennia ago and all that kind of stuff. You're on their corpses, and it has life on it and all that. And you're really tiny compared to it, but as you go on, you get the sense of scale. Like, yes, you actually feel you are on these things. Like, at one point, you are on like their foot, and you look up, you can see way up high the like part of the Bionis and see the Mechonis across the way and all that.
Such
and
a cool concept.
Yeah, and despite this being I know this is updated visual and stuff, but even this is a 10-year-old Wii game, and I was continuously just impressed with the way the places looked and just the scale of it. Monolith Soft are masters of open world design, and they unfortunately don't get their due.
I was constantly impressed with it too, just walking by. There was the time you walk around, like, oh wow, this.
He's like, oh, what's this? Like, oh yeah, I'm just on his like thigh or something.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yep. All the pretty colors.
And just the open world design there seems way ahead of its time in a lot of ways. So.
Unfortunately, not really replicated too much. It's kind of still mainly a Monolith Soft thing.
It sounds like it does a really good use, has a really good use of scale.
Yeah.
Because I think we all know like the whole. I mean, we've all played Skyrim, and where it's like, oh, I can climb that mountain, and then you get up to that mountain, it's like, really, this is not a very big mountain. Whereas with this, it sounds like it really kind of puts you. You really feel the scale of like these gods or robots or whatever they are. Yeah, I think that's really impressive for an open world game to be able to capture that sense of scale.
Yep, and it gives you reasons to explore because even if, there's not like a story purpose, you get experience whenever you discover a new place, and like even the areas you got to go more out of your way for hidden areas, they're like I think they're just called like hidden locations or something. You just get a whole buttload of experience, and usually it's a cool item there or something.
Really cool. I guess it's on to me now, right?
Yep.
All right. So my runner-up for favorite setting is the world of Hylix 2, which I'll talk more about later. But my favorite setting is Signs of the Sojourner. Again, this kind of post-apocalyptic world where you're traveling around to various towns and communities, and you get a sense of these... when you're traveling around, so a mechanic in this is that it is a card game, so where you are pretty much... you're forming a conversation with cards, and these cards are represented on the left side. There may be a circle, and on the right side there may be a triangle. So if someone plays triangle circle, I have to connect to that circle. So I want to play a card that has a circle on the left side, and so you're kind of building a conversation like that. But not everybody speaks circle triangles. Some people speak triangle squares or diamonds and circles. And so a mechanic in this game is that when you finish a conversation with somebody, you have to pick a new card from their deck to replace a card in your deck. And so as you're traveling around, you're becoming, I guess, if you talk to a lot of people who are fluent in diamonds and circles and you start incorporating those cards into your deck, you are becoming more, you know how to speak to these people. You're becoming more familiar with the dialect of circles and or diamonds and circles.
It's kind of simulating you learning their language or culture and things like that. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, and it's really fun, going around. You go to there's this town like way to the east that's squares and diamonds, which is like the opposite of what you initially understand. And their whole attitude is being very direct, whereas where you come from, people are a little bit more empathetic. And it's just, you really do get the feeling that you're in a place that's totally foreign and alien to you, and you just cannot communicate with anybody. And I think that's the way that this game kind of expresses its setting in that way through conversation, I think is really, really good.
It sounds very interesting.
So favorite setting is Signs of the Sojourner.
I'm intrigued for this game that I had never even heard of. Well, I just have 3 runner-ups for setting pretty much in this order. That Haven, which was, I think, it was very charming and just like cool, easy to chill out and like distant planet. I think Seattle in The Last of Us Part 2 was really well done, and you got to explore that city pretty fully. And I think like it was just that you really feel like you had like done this whole like journey over the city by the time the end of it. I liked that a lot. And second runner-up is Ori. That world is just beautiful. It's like a freaking Pixar movie or Disney movie. It's insane. It's so beautiful and really, really well done, and a lot more variety in this one versus the first game, and it's just great. But my number one is Midgar Final Fantasy VII Remake. I think, again, as we've kind of already touched on, the way that they took this city that the original already just felt really big for its time, but a lot of things that in the 90s you had to like use your imagination for. Like you're talking about the sense of scale, you didn't quite get that. You just had to know that it's like, okay, well, there's this giant pillar above me, but it was like left a lot to your imagination. Whereas this, I really feel like it immersed you in the way that it's like, oh no, this actually is. The fact that I can just look up and see the plate above me, or there's like a different district that you just heard a few lines about, but it's like, no, we're going there. And like when we travel between these different districts in Midgar, it's not just you're traveling to another screen on this 2D thing. It's you are going through this environment, and it is all fully realized and just brimming with life between like Wall Market compared to Shinra Building compared to the slums. It's like, it was incredible. It's just my like what I always like imagined as a kid, but it's realized in an actual full modern game in a way that I just never thought I would see before. So I love that city,
Yeah, being able to look up and see the plate when you're down in the slums, I think is really really does give you a sense of scale of this place, as well. I mean, it's a great visual metaphor too, like the way that this city is kind of stratified, and it's yeah, it's a really really cool looking city
Well,
setting.
and kind of like you were touching the fact that you in this version you get to see kind of what life is like for the people on the top plate and be like, oh, this is a lot more like normal life there is in a normal neighborhood with nice houses and everything, and then you go back down to the slums and it's like, oh yikes, you know? It's
Yeah,
because there's big like capitalist undertones, you know, not really undertones in Final Fantasy 7, but
yeah, I really like that part too when you're up in the scaffolding of the plate and you're kind of messing with the giant sun lamps that give light to the people beneath you. It really does drive home the situation that people who live under the plate, like their conditions that they live in, and just how totally different it is from those who live on top of the plate.
yeah. They really went into the details more than I had even expected them to. Things like that. It's awesome. Will, do you want to say any words about? I'm just interested to hear about Tsushima Island or anything like that.
For Tsushima,
Yeah, for setting, absolutely. I'm just interested because, like, yeah, hearing about how they created that island and everything, you know, that feudal Japan type open world thing that everyone's always wanted for so long.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is beautiful. I think it really, I mean, I had seen obviously the trailers and promo art and all that kind of stuff, but playing that game really is a different experience when it comes to the setting and the actual world and traveling in that world. It is a very pretty game, just in terms of, you know, as you've seen over and over again, the leaves just falling to the ground and you riding through the flowers, through the grass, through the long grass and stuff like that in Tsushima is really special. Even if I think the certain mechanics do get repetitive or you know, the story didn't exactly strike me in the way that it struck other people, but yeah, just traveling around on Tsushima is really special, and I really enjoyed that game because of that. Some other stuff just in terms of setting, I played the game Tacoma this year. I don't know if y'all played that, but yeah, I was a big fan of Gone Home, so I was excited to get into Tacoma, and the space station of Tacoma I think really stood out to me in terms of setting, just exploring that.
Yeah, I really want to play Tacoma. That seems like a really great game.
Yeah, I don't know why I've never gotten around to it because I also love Gone Home.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about Gone Home again recently. I kind of want to replay Gone Home, and it's like I should play Tacoma. I mean, I heard some like slightly negative things about it, but I'm sure it's like it's probably just being compared to Gone Home, and it's just a hard thing to do again. But
yeah, I mean, it's a little bit different. You know, you're not so much as looking at like, I mean, you are looking at environmental stuff, but you know, as you've seen in the trailers, you also kind of see like in the past, I guess, past actions of the crew members. So it's a little bit different in the storytelling, but I enjoyed it a lot. I think you would if you like Gone Home for sure.
nice, awesome.
All right. Favorite art style / direction?
All right. Well, my shout outs are Haven, like I said before, same thing with the setting, everything. I kind of already talked about that before, but second or third, whatever, my second one there is Hades. I thought that art style just like really popped. I mean,
Yeah.
all of Supergiant's games, they all look great, but I think this is where it really like has stood out the most, I think. As just a like, it's just pleasing to look at, and every single area is just like, I love the colors they choose to use are just very interesting. You know,
You can almost like do kind of like a 3-color, like a tricolor of like each area,
yes.
and you would know exactly like this is Asphodel, this is Elysium, et cetera, and you would. I think that speaks to the art direction in that game.
Have y'all seen Danny O'Dwyer's docuseries on Supergiant?
I've not.
Oh
should.
man,
yeah, I should.
y'all really need to watch that. He has, I think he has 2 parts, or maybe it's 3. Maybe he has the Bastion, Transistor, and a Pyre one, and then he did a bunch of like mini doc episodes, I guess, as they were making Pyre. Dude, they're all really good, and they really show you. You know, Darren has his own bits for when he's making the music, but it also goes into the designer who does all the art. It's really incredible. I definitely recommend it. I think y'all will like it a lot.
Yeah, just what a studio, and just with how chaotic the action can get in there, but that it never stops looking beautiful.
Yeah.
Even when it's just chaos and there are things flying everywhere, it never really looks that video gamey. Like I can't even like this is just like noise on the screen. It's like no, it still looks stunning the entire time, and just the character designs and everything are like simultaneously scary sometimes, but then like Cerberus is like adorable.
Yeah.
And everyone's hot.
Everyone's really
Everyone's hot.
It's a good video game.
Yeah.
And then my second runner-up before I get to the actual one is Ori, because and it's kind of insane that that's not my top one, but Ori is also just beautiful in every single way, and seeing those characters and everything in motion stuff, and like just the lighting effects and how they work in that game at such a like high frame rate and all these crazy stuff is just beautiful. But my number one is Final Fantasy VII Remake, just because, and I think if I was being more objective about it, I would choose something else. But just walking around this world and just seeing how realistic so many of these environments looked,
Like that door.
like that door, so great.
The door.
That's what I'm saying. Like if I was working at an outlet trying to be very objective, I would put both of the previous games above this one. But for me, it was just incredible, and seeing the summons, the way their design and everything. Like I would just loved it from top to bottom.
All right, my runner-up is also Hades. Again, Gen Z is a phenomenal artist, and I think it speaks a lot that Supergiant. There's really no other games out there that look like Supergiant games. Like they have their own style to them, and all of the character designs in Hades are really strong, and also reference a lot of mythology too. Something that I didn't even notice, but the portrait for Achilles, if you notice in his character, you can see where he kind of cut a lock of hair off. And that as a reference, I guess, to the Iliad, where he cuts off a lock of hair in mourning of Patroclus.
Okay.
So there's a lot of really small touches, I think, in the character designs. But my favorite art direction is, without a doubt, Hylix 2. That game has such a wild, surreal art style. A lot of it looks like it's incorporating claymation, which is something that you don't really see in games a whole lot anymore. And it's a very abstract, surrealist RPG. And it's the art style just is. I've never seen anything in a game quite like that. It's really good.
I can understand why one's just looking at it like depending how it goes in motion, because it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, there are parts of it where it almost looks like it's rotoscope, like some of the animations, and it's really cool.
Well, it looks like it, like from the GIF that I saw you post, it looks like it also will mix in like real life footage, like a real hand comes down. It's like very surrealist and just weird.
Yeah. It's a game that constantly makes its world feel alien, I think, through its art design, and I like that a lot. So
are they drinking coffee in battle?
Yeah, and bananas and burritos. There's a great animation where you'll eat a banana, which heals you, and the banana will peel open and kind of like, I guess, like 5 or 6 frames, and it's really just kind of like an interesting stop motion almost looking animation. So really cool game, Hylix 2.
Very
How much drugs were they on?
All of them.
I think it's made by like one guy.
Oh God, that's got a lot of drugs.
Way too many drugs for that one man.
Right. So let's see.
I see your tweet, Darby. Whoa, that's creepy. Looks like one of those Windows 95 backgrounds.
It kind of does.
People have described it as like Earthbound, but on acid, which is pretty accurate.
That's funny.
That's a lot of extra acid. Earthbound, you're already on acid a little bit. Okay, runner up for me. Persona. I mean, that style cannot be denied.
No.
Those menus are
the menu
fanciest
screen alone.
Yes, exactly. And just everything about it. It's just fantastic. Paper Mario. I think this easy one to put in here. Just Paper Mario games just hold up visually so much better than their contemporaries whenever they come out. Like, you look at the N64 one, it ain't so because it's an N64, but as far as the art style, it holds up better than like any other game from it.
Yeah.
And you could say that about any generation of Paper Mario games from. This is definitely true now. I'm like, how much better can this series look? It's just crazy with the Paper Graph stuff, all they do, and all these characters.
The mother fucking water. That
Yes,
game.
the water
Like,
is beautiful.
That Paper Mario game has no business having like the best looking water I've seen in the
Yep.
game.
Just the way they use origami and all that kind of stuff is just absolutely fantastic. But Darby said this probably should have been his winner. It is my winner, Ori, The Will of the Wisp. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Like Darby's saying, that art style is beautiful. And with the mix of the music, it's like you just feel something right away just looking at it, hearing it.
It's incredible.
Yeah,
It's
just
incredible.
seeing all that emotion. There were some bugs when we first played it, but when it runs smooth, it's just like, man, you just think, how can they do this? How can this thing look this beautiful and play this great?
Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna make that my number one. I think that should be my number one. Probably 7 should be my number two. I think probably 7 is more about the setting and everything. I do love the art style, but it has kinks in the armor, and Ori has none. Ori has literally none. It's like, I think Ori should be number one. Nice. But I will say, if I could put Persona 5 in this, then that would get very interesting.
Alrighty.
Sweet.
So, Will, you got any art styles you want to shout out?
Not particularly, except for, I would say Pyre. Obviously, I haven't played Hades quite yet, but everything that Supergiant does.
I was about to say, any of you play a Supergiant game, you get at least a shout out.
It's beautiful.
For most things.
Yeah.
It's just the world we live in.
Just art and music, always they get a shout out.
Yep. All right, so now we're at soundtrack/score.
Speaking of music.
Great year for
another bloodbath,
yeah, especially when I decided to put in updated versions of old games that are very popular for that.
Again, if I could include that one, then this would get very, very interesting.
Runner up, I got to give a special shout out to Paper Mario. It's one that doesn't get talked about as much as far as when these discussions come up, but it's surprising just how good it is. But anyone who's played it, it absolutely knows it's great. Ori score is great, especially like I said, the mixture with the visuals and soundtrack is like just top tier. FF7, of course, great soundtrack. Final Fantasy always has great music that we know would it might have won someone's here. Xenoblade, great. Monolith Soft has really great music. I was honestly like FF7, Xenoblade, my winner. I was going back and forth for the longest time because they're all top tier JRPG soundtracks that are probably, in my mind, the top of the just soundtracks in general for me. So my winner is Persona 5 Royal because the amount of bangers in that soundtrack it's just unparalleled. I mean, come on, just absolute bangers.
The fact that you can listen to those songs over and over again for 120 hours and you still are like, it's freaking good. I still listen to them like studying and doing it at work and stuff now, especially now that it's on Spotify all the time.
Yeah, I think the thing that put it over it for me is just the general, like compared to the other soundtracks, just the general just doing everyday life stuff in Persona 5. Those songs get caught in your head more than just the generic walking around music in Xenoblade and Final Fantasy 7 for me. And that was what took it over the top.
Yeah, I can completely understand that.
I think in Yakuza Like a Dragon, you can select the main theme from Persona 5, the Beneath the Mask when you're walking around the city.
That's dope.
You can select that as kind of like the music to play. And so if your music is being featured in other JRPGs, I think that's a very good sign.
But this is going to boost our review score by at least one.
Yeah, they were like, went across the hallway to like, yo, Atlas, can we borrow a song?
Yeah, they're like, sure, man. Yeah, put it in there.
It'll be $500.
Which is like Persona 5 is like a weird thing where the video game music usually is like its purpose is to kind of blend in and for you it to not be the forefront thing on your mind, but for it to be like in your subconscious, it's like it fits the scene and everything. Persona 5 is in your face with its music, but it does not get annoying or in the way. It's so much a part of the DNA of that game is that music that is like, even though like almost not like the fact that they have a battle theme song that has lyrics, that would be very annoying in most games. I would be like, I am very tired of hearing these lyrics over and over again. But in Persona,
It's like, ooh, I'm hyped.
it's like, yeah, it's like, because it's just like that game is just oozing style, and that's like so much a part of the game.
Yeah, I know there are Royals as if like edition songs, but I don't remember which ones are which. I mean, I know which ones are Persona 5, but I don't know because I only played part of the game. Don't know which ones in the later that are Royal specific songs. But they're all great, so Royal songs are great, you know.
All right, so I had a hard time with soundtrack, but my runner-up is Kentucky Route Zero.
Nice.
That game's soundtrack is it's interesting to where a lot of the sound, all the songs in it are pretty ambient, but it does use songs that are, you could call it country and bluegrass, that at very critical moments, I think, in the game's story. And I think the only moment in games that actually brought me to tears this year was in Kentucky Route Zero, and it was using one of those tracks to really convey that emotional weight to it. And I think its use of kind of country and bluegrass music is appropriate because Kentucky Route Zero is a game that's a lot about labor, and it's kind of calling back to those work songs of like the 30s and 40s. And so it's kind of, it's a game that's very much about today, but it's referencing, I think, songs that were written almost 100 years ago that are often about the same thing. But my favorite soundtrack is actually from Hylix 2.
Nice.
Which that soundtrack, even though I don't think the songs in it are as like emotionally powerful to me as the songs in Kentucky Route Zero, the soundtrack in Hylix 2 I find myself returning to just to listen to on a whim. And if you're really into like prog funk, that's what that soundtrack is.
Speaking my language.
It's a lot of like prog rock crossed with like funk, really good bass lines
I should
in
play
some
this
of the
game.
songs. So it's just like really good and interesting soundtrack that fits with the visuals in the game. So Hylix 2 is my favorite soundtrack.
Hell yeah. That's awesome.
How long is this game?
It's about 12 hours.
Oh, fuck yeah. Let's go.
There were multiple good soundtracks this year, but I think the top three for me are like way above the rest of them. And that is, first off, Hades. I really was kind of caught off guard with just like how much I like really love that soundtrack. It's not quite as like in your face as like Transistor with like the singing. I mean, I know this has some like awesome like vocal songs in this as well, but it's more just the like general like they know exactly when to crank into high gear on that soundtrack, and it's like right when you go into a boss, it's like it's like you just feel hype. But then as soon as you get done with the boss, that like drum, that doom, I love that track so much. It's like it's such a kind of like chill track, but it's like I don't know, it has energy. That I like that soundtrack a lot. And Ori is just beautiful. That's the second one. It's just it's like the original one, but I think it's taken up several more notches. There's just lots of different instruments. It's like one of the most full sounding soundtracks I've ever heard in the game, where it like I think there's some soundtracks, even very good video game soundtracks, it's very obvious, okay, that's MIDI. It's kind of a MIDI type thing, or it's like you're using electronic instruments. It's like they got a freaking orchestra for this. It's like it's just stunning, and I think so much of the emotion of that game, like most of the emotion of that game, is tied to its soundtrack. But my number one, it's boring, but it is Final Fantasy VII Remake. I think this is the category that I think is just like blows everything else away in, because I already thought the original Final Fantasy VII was my favorite soundtrack of all time, and so much of a part of why I love that game is tied to the kind of like nostalgic feeling and like things that like the way they tie like emotional moments with very like simple songs, but they like work really well and just like tug at your heartstrings. But then it'll also be like, yep, this is 90s sci-fi. Here we go with the weird like techno stuff.
Yeah, that jukebox just with all the...
Yes, and that's what I was going to get into. Remake, it's so clear the people making the soundtrack love Final Fantasy VII, and they were just having a good ass time making the soundtrack. And you get that from all the many different revised versions of the songs you already know that are so well, like that they do in the actual song. But then, like Jeff said, in the jukebox, they're like, "Yep, everyone loves these songs and knows them. Make a jazz version, make a blues version, make a like techno version, make a like heavy metal version, make a." It's like they were just having a good time, and the sheer amount of times that just music just made me smile in this game was just 10 out of 10.
Unfortunately, I'm still waiting for that concert. We have tickets for to get canceled.
I know. COVID.
Before we move on, I just want to give a special shout out to the CPU song from Astro. Just,
yeah.
Just for people who don't know, when you're in that level or whatever, you're hearing it's a nice song, but then you look up and see it like the actual physical manifestation of the CPU, like mouthing the lyrics the whole time.
Very fun.
Got anything, Will?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
For this one.
All right. Then we will move on to favorite, I'm just going to assume, gameplay mechanic.
Nice. Okay, let me find it. All my stuff's out of order here. Okay. Just very quickly, gotta shout out the DualSense mechanics with Astro's Playroom. Even though I didn't get to play a ton of that, I sat with Jeff so much, I feel like I got it. And I did get the feel, and it was very impressive.
Oh, yeah.
It's super impressive
nice
stuff. Really loved that. Second shout out is just the entire like kit building in Hades. The fact that like you can choosing a certain weapon, and that already being very different, but then every single run with those weapons, like the decisions you make after that had so much bigger of an effect than I ever thought it would. And like no matter how many runs you do, you'll still find things that are just completely new playstyle. And it was amazing that I never had a playstyle that I was like, oh well, this is just bad. Yeah, like even the ones that I wasn't as crazy about, it's like, no, this is viable. Like it is like one of the most balanced games I've ever played in my life. It's absurd, and that was such a satisfying mechanic to do that. But my number one, I'm the most boring person on this whole panel, is the character switching in Final Fantasy VII Remake. That whole concept of thinking about how they're going to handle the gameplay of Final Fantasy VII to kind of blend modern style with this old turn-based. And the answer they came up with, I think, was just so much fun. And especially as you get into some of the more harder fights in that game, setting up one attack with like Cloud and then like switching over to Barrett and like launching his limit break and then switching over to Aerith and healing everyone or doing some big attack. Just, it was like a puzzle. It was like solving a puzzle in this like combat system in a way, like switching between them, and I just like really loved it so much. It never got tired for me. It's great.
So my runner-up for favorite, I guess, mechanic is the job change system in Yakuza Like a Dragon, which, if you haven't played that game or you don't know, pretty much to change your job or your class, essentially, for characters, you go down to a literal like employment office and you can select from like whatever jobs they are qualified for. And so you have jobs like breakdancer or bodyguard or chef or, office assistant. And then the way that those the skills that you would associate with a job like that are kind of translated into like JRPG attacks. So like for the office assistant, like a character will just like throw thumbtacks at people. Or like if you're going to like do like fire breath, like a fire spell, someone takes a swig of alcohol and then like holds up a lighter and like lights people on fire. It's really creative and funny. And it's I think it's the way it kind of puts like these the JRPG classes that you would think of in like more of like a medieval setting, and it kind of translates that to modern Japanese society. I think is really funny and also really smart. But hands down, my favorite mechanic is definitely like the way Signs of the Sojourner kind of gamifies conversation is really just unbelievably genius. I've kind of talked about it before, where you're kind of matching symbols on cards, but you also get cards that have abilities to go along with that. So you have a card called like Accommodate, which copies what the last person played. So you're kind of accommodating space for them. There's a card called Clarify, which is you can kind of insert that card in an earlier sequence. So say like a card doesn't match whatever like the last card was played, you can insert a clarify card earlier into the conversation, so you're going back and you're kind of clarifying a point
Very.
for that. There's chatter, which allows you to play 2 cards back to back, and so on and so forth. But it is a game where you're traveling around with a caravan, and so you also build up these cards that's called fatigue, and fatigue doesn't match to anything because you're tired, so no one can understand what you're saying. And and that's like a problem. It's like when you get done with your trip, which is like a 50-day trip, you just have like so many fatigue cards, and no one, you're just so unbelievably tired, and no one can understand like what you're saying.
It's bumbling, sleep deprived.
Exactly.
Like me on the podcast.
And then another about halfway through the game, like a natural disaster kind of strikes the region that you're in. And so a lot of people are displaced from their homes, and you start seeing a new symbol which stands for trauma. And the only thing that connects to trauma is more trauma. And so I think it's a really just genius way to kind of, the limits of kind of communicating with people who have had like these kind of like life altering events in their lives. But I think a really powerful moment that I've kind of talked about this game before is how you're going around and you're acquiring new cards. And so the setup, like I said, you're taking care of your mom's shop, but your best friend is actually the one who is staying in the town and taking care of the shop while you're traveling around and kind of acquiring these goods to sell. And so every time you finish a trip, you go back home and you talk to him, and then a really powerful moment happens when you come home and like you can't understand each other anymore because like your life experiences are just so different, and so you're tired, you don't really talk how you used to talk anymore, and you just can't understand each other. And that is just such, I think, a powerful moment.
This game sounds really cool.
It really teaches you how code switching works, and how your life experiences shapes your language and subsequently your self-identity. It is the most impressive way I've ever seen conversation handled in a game. And I hope the right people play this game and kind of take notes, because it's so genius.
Well, Jake, you have my attention. It just sounds like it's really well thought out with the how the cards go to like actual real life conversations and moments and stuff. That sounds really cool.
It's a really cool game.
Interesting.
Now my winner's going to look
Switch release date?
I don't think so, but it is planned to come out there on that platform.
Now, my winner is going to look very immature in comparison, but we'll get to that. Runner-ups. Just being able to... The level-up system for weapons in Final Fantasy VII. Really like, you only get a couple weapons per character for the most part throughout the game. But the way that it works, so you can level up weapons throughout. All weapons are viable. Yes. The way they work is different. Just kind of customize them to your playstyle, especially in Tangent with the materia system.
Yeah.
It's really good. Like, being able to use the Buster Sword on Cloud in the very end and it being viable felt good, because it would just feel wrong during those last cutscenes to have any other sword. It just would feel wrong.
No, I didn't have it, but
You played it wrong.
Not the real Cloud.
But and I think I want more RPGs to take note of this, because like you said, I love that all weapons at all points were viable, and they kind of like save you from yourself in the sense that like you are incentivized to go use new weapons, because if you use it long enough, you got a new skill based off that weapon. So you wouldn't do the thing that everyone always does, and you find one thing that works and just do that. Like, it was just very well done.
Yep. Persona fusing. In Persona 5 Royal, that's something I knew I liked from my first stint with the original Persona 5. I could just sit there for 30 minutes to an hour looking at potential fusions and what personas I can get, and planning out that stuff for a little bit. I don't know, just that kind of thing. Just I have a lot of fun with looking at. It's like, okay, what's the mix of like physical magic people? Make sure I have all the elements I need, all that kind of stuff. It's really fun and it can be very addicting for me. But my favorite gameplay mechanic is obviously turning the characters in the bug snacks into monstrosities.
Hell yeah, dude, let's go.
There we go.
People don't know, in bug snacks, you feed the characters the bug snacks, and then a body part changes. At first, it's kind of random. I think it's in set order, but it's kind of random. But after a certain point in the story, you can manually select what changes.
At that point is when they become Lovecraftian horrors.
Yep. And then at some point, you can change them to something. Change any piece of their body into anything they previously eaten, so you can completely customize them. Make him like a full watermelon person, or I made one of the guys into like. It made him a crown of watermelons, and he had like fry arms and that kind of stuff, running around with like a cheese or a baked potato body or something. It's just a lot of fun seeing like how these people formed throughout the game and how they were at the end.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you chose that. That's good.
Okay, so I guess next would
Favorite weapon?
Yep, favorite weapon. Okay, back to me. Let's see. So runner-ups, Mipha from Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity. I got a couple of these that are just people. That's just the way these games work, I guess. Because you use her spear. She's a Zora, so if you don't know, it's like a fish lady. So you're swimming around, hitting people swiftly. She can make whirlpools come out of the ground. You can place them, but then you press a button and go through the whirlpools across the field and continue combos. Just a fun time. Nice. Going around and slaughtering people. Olivia from Paper Mario, mainly because she can turn into a bunch of like big giant monsters. She can fold herself and make herself bigger into these monstrosities like a turtle, a dragon, all that kind of stuff, and do these super attacks and stuff. It's a lot of fun. Bunger from Bugsnax. Bunger. The reason I put this under weapon, partly for the joke, I'm not going to lie, but how you catch some of these Bugsnax, or a way to catch them, is to lure Bunger towards them, and he will tackle them and daze them, and then you can catch them.
That's a weapon.
It's a lot of fun.
Bunger as a weapon.
Especially when he does the whole time he's happy going, Bunger, Bunger, Bunger. Just a fun time. And my favorite one is Melia's staff from Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. I guess this is partly mixed in with mechanic, because the mechanic of her staff and just her stuff in general. But she can do these status effects that are based on different elements, like stack up to 3, like fire, everyone's attack goes up. Water, everyone's steadily healing. Mm-hmm. But then you can use her special ability to take away that status effect and do a super attack on people. So nice. You can build up that stuff and just power up your party and then just attack people in an onslaught. And that's just a lot of fun.
Nice.
So, I mean, favorite weapon, this is all Hades. I mean, no doubt about that.
Same. Well, let's just tag team on this. Let's just tag team.
I think we're in Hades.
I think
57.
Really?
I have not played Hades.
There's like 8.
There's 6, and then there's different variations
mods
that you can unlock, for the weapon.
And some of those like completely change
what
them.
I'm about to get
like
into.
It's completely changed them. So.
Yeah, I think it really speaks to the gameplay, the action in Hades, that everyone has a different favorite weapon, and everyone has like a weapon that they dislike the most.
Yeah,
like I really liked the twin fists. And then
that's my favorite.
That's your favorite?
That's my favorite, yep.
And then with the magnetic cutter, which pretty much just puts a long-range attack on like a fist weapon where you pull enemies in towards you, and it's just so nasty. But then my favorite weapon is probably the bow with the what is called the aspect of Chiron, which makes it to where normally your secondary attack on the bow is like a spread of 7 or 6 arrows. This variation, what it does is that it tags the enemy with your normal attack, and then when you hit that secondary attack, all those arrows converge on one target. So it just obliterates, with the right boons, the right upgrades, it just obliterates bosses, and it's so great.
Yeah, I'll just say the fist. That was really the only thing I was gonna say is the Hades fist was my favorite. But I think it's a testament to Hades that like my favorite weapon changed like 5 times. Okay, I started out with the bow like being my favorite one, but now I'm like, no, I don't want to use the bow. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like
stupid old Darby.
What the hell? Yeah, old Darby didn't know what he was talking about. I also love the shield, like making that bounce between different targets.
Yeah, that one wasn't for me, but
I loved it. Yeah, and the like bull rush, and just like just the amount that sometimes you would get a run and you get some boon and you'd be like, I can't play this game without this. What the hell? Like, I have to get that back again. But then you'd find something else that'd be like, oh no, this is just as good, if not better. And it would just kept one-upping itself. It was great.
And then like because the variations, there's about like 4 variations, and there's one that's locked at the end, which it completely changes the way the weapon functions. Like one for the spear, it like reduces your health, but your secondary heals you. And it's such a like the weapons in the game are so good. It just
Sweet.
Yeah, they all change the style your playthrough, and it's really
It was just
satisfying.
an expertly made game. It's great. All right, Jeff, what's our next
right.
category?
So next one is favorite old game or games.
All right, well, yeah, let's get through and then let's let Will unload.
Take the reins.
So, very quick shout out, Disco Elysium. I didn't play enough of it. I really want to get back to it. I kind of like started taking a break from it. It's just very dense, but I am really, really loving the way that it kind of turns RPG tropes on its head as far as like the mechanics, and just like I'm always surprised by what my character is going to say or what mechanic's going to happen. It's just a fascinating game. Second runner-up is A Short Hike, which I think is a game that everyone should play. It's literally like an hour and a half long. And it's a very simple game where you play this, like, it's a bunch of anthropomorphic animals, and you're like on this island on basically vacation, and there's like you're just like, I think you're a teenager. I think you're supposed to be a teenager. You're supposed to be pretty young. And your person's kind of like bummed out about something, but you don't exactly know what. And it's just you interact with everyone on this island and like just hear about all their different problems, and like you slowly learn more about like what your character's going through and everything. And it's just like a very short and sweet, and like doesn't get too crazy, but it's like very grounded in the cool way story. And the gameplay mechanics are like, it's the best flying I think I've ever seen in the game, because it's very, very satisfying.
Yeah.
You're like, the way you slowly get more flaps of your wing as the game goes, until you can just fly all the way above the island and then just like glide wherever you want, and it's very satisfying. It's such a charming game. If you love A Night in the Woods, the writing reminds me a lot of Night in the Woods. It's a little happier than Night in the Woods, but it's great.
I wonder what his winner is.
But my winner, biggest.
What is that game? What's that game on?
It's on Switch now,
And PC.
but I played it on PC, but I think it's now on Switch.
Yep.
And if you got that Black Lives Matter bundle through Itch, it's in that bundle. So
Yeah.
That's how I'm going to play it when I get around to it.
I believe that's how I played it. I played it on PC, so I think that was after that. Yeah, that was after that.
It was.
Cool. My number one, such a big surprise for me this year, is League of Legends, which I put about 135 hours into.
damn, son.
I thought you told me 180. I feel
Yeah,
like
I was wrong. I looked at it. It was like 135.
how you get it off by 50 hours?
I wasn't looking at it very often. I don't know, dude. when you have that many hours, then what's the I mean, it's still a lot of freaking hours, and it's just not something that I ever really expected. But me and Alex, we play Overwatch together a lot, and we just like kind of on a whim, we're like, let's just try it. We're kind of getting bored of playing Overwatch over and over and over again. And I just really, really fell in love with the game. It's like, in a lot of ways, it's way more complicated than like an Overwatch, but something about the like MOBA, the like top down, you're making decisions. It's not like first person aiming. I just like, it vibed with me a lot more. And I just like playing through this game. You could play, like, I played 130 hours in all support. I don't know how to play jungle. If I get put on jungle or like top or mid or something, it's like I'm playing a completely new game. And there's like 140 something characters in there, and some of them just play like, they're literally playing different games. It's crazy the amount of variety that's in this game, and that's why you could play this game for 10 years and still be learning new things. It's just, there's so much to it, but I also don't think it's quite as inaccessible as people probably make it out to be. You know, it's like, it's fun, and I definitely feel like I'm making an impact in that game more so than some other competitive team-based games, because it's just really well made. It's just an insanely well-balanced game. It's really cool.
To give people an idea how much he likes this game, he's actually excited for a Pokemon game. The Pokemon MOBA that's coming out.
I'm pretty damn excited. I forgot where it we just did the 2021 hype list, but I think it was in the top 5 at least, which is
Yeah, it was pretty high.
Yeah.
It just, I know the context of it, but just hearing Darby say number 5 and anticipated Pokemon anything.
What reality am I in?
where
Yeah.
are we?
He had a Pokemon game higher than me.
I know.
That's crazy.
Bizarre. Really bizarre. Yeah, just did not expect that to be what I was saying. My favorite old 2020 game is League of Legends, but it is.
Real fast, my favorite old game is it's not a new old game. It's an old game. I replayed it. It's Deadly Premonition. I replayed it in anticipation of Deadly Premonition 2, and I like that game a lot. I played it on Switch, which is probably the best way to play it, and it just holds up. Just one of my favorites, Deadly Premonition.
Hell yeah.
Did you like the second one?
Not nearly as much as the first game, but I think the sequel is fine. It's fine for what it is.
Was that
I
2020?
watched someone.
Yes.
Okay.
I watched someone play the sequel a little bit, and it was hilarious.
Yeah.
I'll say that much. It was really funny, very amusing to watch. Skateboard mechanics.
I mean, I think that's a big part of the enjoyment of the first one is that it's hilarious too.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think with the sequel, Deadly Premonition 2, I kind of talked about this before, where those games share a lot in common with like cult films, and it's just really hard to do a sequel to a cult film. It's,
Right.
and I think the sequel has those problems where it's trying. I think the best moments in the sequel were pretty much like parts that were the most closely tied to the first game, and I think that says a lot.
Right. My favorite old games, I only got 2 compared to last year where I had like 5 big ones. Runner up, I guess, is Resident Evil 2. Got that in shortly after 2019, pretty early on in the year, so still counts for this category. Loved it. Definitely growing more as a Resident Evil fan. I'm really excited for 8 that coming out. Hopefully we hear the release date this upcoming week at that presentation. But yes, really enjoyed everything, just the general vibe of it. I didn't do like the second playthroughs for both of them, so I don't know, no comment on exactly like the differences between those, but love what I played. Leon and Claire are cool, and all that. Let's see where RE3 lands on my list. Come here. Number 1 is for our old games, Witcher 3. Let's go.
hell yeah, that feels good. Let's go.
Feels good.
Whoa.
Finally got around to it this year. Absolutely loved it. Just the way characters are written out and how like some of the choices actually affect things way off into the game and how some characters feel about you towards the end of the game is just really well done and better than pretty much most other games. Geralt is a joy, obviously, like Ciri. Got a little figure thing right there.
Love those characters so much.
Yep. Very excited for maybe a potential Witcher 4.
And Witcher Netflix.
Yes, we need that season 2, baby.
Yep.
Okay, William.
The floor is
All right.
yours.
Lay it on us.
Well, let's see. If we're gonna do top 10s later, should I just save those and just kind of go over some other games that aren't in my top 10?
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good to me.
So, these are, I guess, what I would say are honorable mentions for games that I played this year that I enjoyed a good bit, but aren't in my top 10. So, so I replayed Batman Arkham Asylum, which I had not played since, I don't know, early high school, I guess. I absolutely love all those games, obviously, but I was so much younger when I played Arkham Asylum that I realized that I really wanted to play that game again, and I was very happy I did. It's definitely claustrophobic, it's definitely creepy, and it felt really good to get back into that game that, like I said, I did play a long time ago, but I don't think I appreciated it as much as I do now. So that was a lot of fun. I got the platinum in that.
Nice.
Which took a while. Man, those challenge rooms are not great. Or not even the challenge rooms. It's the fighting ones. I guess those are still challenge rooms, but that took it out of me. Tacoma was definitely really good as well. That was really quick. I think I got the platinum for that in a day or two, but I did really enjoy that. I like breaking up how I play games with something like that every once in a while, with kind of like a breather in between some of the either more action heavy games or just longer games that I play. So Tacoma was a great story experience that my wife actually watched a good bit of too. I got PS Now this year. It was cheap. I don't know if it was a great purchase.
I got rid of it.
Itself.
I stopped paying for it this year. I paid for it for like 1 year. And
yeah,
didn't do much
I
on
got it for $40, and that's how much Control was whenever I got it. So, and I played Control, so I feel like it paid for itself. But what I wanted to talk about was actually Spec Ops: The Line, which is a 2000 nine game. Yeah. So that had been on my to play list for a very long time. Just I love how people talk about that game. And even though it was, streaming, so it wasn't like exactly responsive, it wasn't the same as playing it 12 years ago or whatever. But it was still a good story, good experience that I did appreciate. And it did. I did really like how it was kind of like a meta commentary on war and violence and what it can do to people. And it kind of actually did remind me of some Arkham Knight stuff, which, have y'all played Arkham Knight? I don't know.
Yes.
So
no, I haven't.
So there's times in Arkham Knight where Batman is kind of going crazy, and if you like turn the camera around, you'll like see an image of the Joker or whatever, and you spin it back around and he's gone. That kind of stuff. And that some of that happens in Spec Ops too, where he's imagining stuff in the desert, and whenever you go to take a second look, whatever was there is gone now. And that was pretty cool.
That's cool.
And finally, Child of Light, which I kind of have a love-hate relationship for now, because I finally beat it a couple days ago, but I guess I went through like a stretch where I was just like, all right, I got to beat this game. I was taking way too long with it, but it kind of burnt me out where I didn't really love the final couple hours of it. But I did definitely like this game for a long time of the year. And it was fun. It was different, totally different than what I thought it was. I thought it was just a platformer, but it's actually a turn-based, I don't know if I would say RPG, but it's turn-based combat and stuff. And that's really one of the only games that I've played like that. And I really, really enjoyed the, what is it, ATB? Is that what it's called? Active Time. I don't know. But I thought that was a lot of fun. I've never really played turn-based like that. So it introduced me a little bit to the genre, and I'm excited to go into that more. Maybe with Final Fantasy VII.
I was about to say, that's the best. That's actually the best step in, because it's not turn based, but it has elements of it.
I love the demo. I mean, I love the demo of Final Fantasy VII. So I think I will probably get into that.
Play it for me, you will. For me,
I'm kind of just like holding off and buying anything else till I get a PS5. So it might be a little bit depending on when I can find one.
If you want something that's probably closer to actual Child of Light, you can probably get the original Final Fantasy VII pretty cheap on the Switch.
That's
true. I don't know if I can make myself do that though. I've looked at it and I'm like,
I don't want him to do that, not like it, and then not play remake. Because like I feel a lot more 100% solid that he'll like remake. So just
yeah,
it's okay to wait.
So those are my, I guess, like 4 games that I liked a lot, but aren't necessarily in my top 10.
Sweet.
I'm just looking real quick.
Well, those are games I need to play. I need to play Tacoma and Child of Light. I'm kind of interested in. But.
Yeah, I also did play the original Castlevania this year. I never beat it, but I had a lot of fun playing that on Switch. So that was pretty fun. Because I also played Mega Man 2 a long time ago on PS4, and it gave me some vibes from that, just like trying to figure out how the heck to play such an old game and trying to figure it out on my own, not look up stuff. But it was a lot of fun. Yep.
Pretty nice.
All right. Biggest surprise.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do any. Probably gonna stop doing shout outs. Try to get through here. My biggest surprise could be a lot of different things. I mean, my biggest surprise is me getting into League of Legends, but that didn't happen this year. But I'm going to choose my biggest surprise as Haven, and being as into Haven as I was. And we had seen it in every single show that like happened all year. And then like for me, it just kind of like I was in the rut of games. Like I'll just try this. It's on Game Pass. I'll give it a shot. And like to go into that game and like I just to come out of it, and I really do feel like that was probably my favorite video game relationship ever. I think the way it was handled was really, really well. It's a game that does not really try to bite off any, like, it doesn't have like excess story fluff. It's like we are telling the story of these two people, and it's this really cool sci-fi backdrop that you slowly learn things about, of like, you know, they're on the run from some people and everything. But for the most part, it's these two people who are on this abandoned planet, like trying to learn to survive and growing together, like in their relationship. And that's mostly the story. And like all the like little elements in there that they do to like show like a real relationship, and like the little problems that you have or the good parts and all this. It was just like really, really well done. I like really love those characters by the end of it. So that was it was just, I was very surprised to like, I sunk through that game immediately. And even when I started playing Cyberpunk, I'm like, I want to finish Haven, you know. So.
It looks pretty. Just looking at photos.
Yeah, it does.
I think y'all would probably like it. It's pretty good. Some of the resource management stuff towards the end gets to be a little tedious. I mean, it's not hard. It's just a little annoying, but yeah.
My biggest surprise definitely is Animal Crossing New Horizons. A game that probably this time last year I was kind of like on the fence about. Like I wasn't sure if I was going to pick it up, but COVID definitely encouraged me to give it a shot. And I'm glad I did, because I put like 140 hours into Animal Crossing. Yeah, I got like the 5-star island. I did all that stuff. Yeah. I almost paid off my debt, but I dropped it.
Jesus Christ.
Before I got there. But yeah, just a great game. Just poured so much time into it, and it was my first Animal Crossing, so it was a huge surprise for me.
Nice.
Biggest prize, run it ups real quick. Microsoft buying Bethesda, just the general what the fuckness of that. And run other up Astro's Playroom, just because it is technically a tech demo, and it probably should not be as good as it is, but it is fantastic, just as a game, just in general. But biggest surprise in general, Bug Snacks. I feel like when that thing was announced, everyone was kind of hyped on it. I was on the lower end. I was like, yeah, it looks cute. Everything sounds catchy, but you know, don't know too much about
Look
it.
at this hating ass hater over here.
Yeah. Well, then it came out. It was on PlayStation Plus. I played it, and now I seem to be one of its biggest supporters, because once it came out, barely anyone talked about it. And everyone who was memeing it, saying like, "Yeah, Bug Snacks, let's go." It's like silence. But what surprised me about it is, based on the marketing, I did not know how strong the characters are actually going to be in the cast in this. The characters are very well done. Surprisingly, has a lot of great LGBTQ reps in there. Like, it's really well done. And just the general story and the mystery behind it is, again, really well done. The actual catching the bug snack, it's about what we expected. It was fun. May got a little old and tedious towards the end, depending on what you're going to do. But the actual characters and the story is what I think takes the game to the next level. And honestly, as far as like how much I like it to review scores, this is probably I would consider one of the more underrated games, because I would definitely rate it higher than some of the games that are going to be on my list that people have a good bit higher.
Yeah.
Really great game. I recommend it.
Yeah, I really want to get around to it.
Waiting on PS5.
Fair.
Same.
You at least grabbed it, right? On the PlayStation Plus?
Yeah, I grabbed it. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I did as well.
Surprise for me, I was trying to think of how to word this. I think how much of a lifesaver a Switch was in 2020. So I bought it, I guess, in February or so, before we got married, and holy crap, it was such a good thing to have in March, April, May, June, July. Like those 5 months, it's just like I was thinking of my biggest surprise being like how much I loved Mario Odyssey, and then I was thinking,
my man,
that's true, and then I was thinking, actually my biggest surprise is how much I love Celeste. And I just kept thinking, and was like, man, no, it really just keeps coming back to the Switch. And
Nice.
like, I think whenever I think of this time of quarantine and like newlyweds and all that kind of stuff, I think I will actually think of the times that I was sitting out on the hammock playing Animal Crossing with my dog beside me, or like us playing Animal Crossing together on the couch, or just going to her parents' house and playing Mario Odyssey on the couch and stuff like that. I think I think it was just a really nice thing to have during this time that obviously was unplanned, but it was it really reinvigorated some of my gaming stuff, I think. So thank you, Switch.
Yeah, I could not agree more. My Switch got a lot of use this year.
Yeah.
Or the past year.
Yeah.
That is awesome. That Nintendo magic.
Yep. All right. Biggest disappointment. This is a category that sometimes only one person has, or nothing. No one has anything to say. I got something to say. Does anyone else?
Yeah.
Or have anything to say?
I'll probably be jumping on yours. So
Okay.
I think we might. I think we
we could probably all jump on the same one.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. So biggest disappointment is not necessarily everything surrounding around it, which obviously is something to talk about, but I'm going to talk about the actual game itself. Cyberpunk 2077. There are a lot of issues around it involving the actual developer and all that kind of stuff and all that. But the actual game itself came out, and if you listen to our Spoilercast, me talking about, I had less bugs compared to most people, nothing crazy. So it's not really that. Just the actual game itself was very disappointing to me in a lot of ways. Like, I played The Witcher. I mentioned how much I love that and the characters and story stuff and how choices matter. This is kind of the opposite, where choices really didn't matter. There were some strong characters and writing in this, but there's a lot more other stuff in between it, where Witcher, it was kind of nonstop.
Yeah.
And, I have to really think about all the great characters and storylines in The Witcher, where Cyberpunk, I can kind of name the main stuff just really quick.
And then, outside of that, it's like, no, that's pretty much the big thing. It's like, I think the biggest disappointment with Cyberpunk is not that it's a bad game, because it's not a bad game. It's like, you will have, I could give this to almost anyone and they're going to have a good time. I had a good time. But it is just simply not the game they sold. I mean, just in many, 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 many ways, it is just a completely different game than the one they sold. It is a Mass Effect type, or just, Ghost of Tsushima. It's one of the, it's like, it has a cool open world, but as far as the RPG-ness of it, as far as how you can interact with the world and what it gives back, it's a very kind of binary, you just go through the story and do the thing, which is just simply not what was sold in marketing, and just not what was expected when it came to this. But even further than that, kind of like Jeff is getting to, even looking at that, it being that kind of game, I think it does some things incredibly well. I think the world is incredible and all that stuff. But when I get to the end of it, I felt pretty unfulfilled by the overall story as a whole. And character-wise, while there were some really strong wins, like you said, I think most of them kind of just meld into, you're not going to remember a lot of these characters years and years and years.
A handful of really good ones. Again, I'm just going to keep on comparing it to Witcher, because I played that this year. That's obviously what reason people were so hyped, where there are dozens and dozens of characters.
Every area has very iconic. Tiger.
Yeah, I mean, Cyberpunk 2077 was a game that, a few years ago, I was really, really excited for.
I told you, I listened back to our 2018 one, and Jacob was the most excited, it sounded like, for
your favorite trailer, I think Darby said.
We were talking about the trailer,
And then, I think starting probably at the tail end of 2019 and then into 2020, my excitement, I guess, for 2077 just plummeted. And then everything surrounding this game's launch, as well as, what people have said, that it's not a very satisfying RPG experience. And then, you have critics chiming in on, this game has a lot of transphobia, a lot of racism, a lot of misogyny. And it's just a game that now I probably will never touch this game. So I think it's probably my biggest disappointment of this year.
My runner-up is Resident Evil 2. All right, let's move on.
Does Will have a disappointment, or is he a happy boy?
Just continuously happy. No, I guess I was kind of caught in the situation where I had almost already told myself that I was going to wait until PS5 for Cyberpunk anyway. So whenever all the news started coming out that it was,
broken,
horrible, broken on base PS4 especially, it was it didn't really, it didn't hurt me. Actually, it wasn't actually me that was hurting me, but it did suck knowing that this game that everyone wanted to be really successful wasn't any good, really, especially for the majority of players. So yes, even if it didn't directly affect me, it was incredibly disappointing. I think I'm still holding out some sort of hope on like a true PS5 option, but obviously they have kind of put themselves in a very dire circumstance themselves. So
well, it's a weird game that, like, Will, I really do think, I mean, if you played the game right now on the PS5 with the right expectations, I think you would. Damn.
He would leave.
He would leave. He's just so mad. He's like, no, I'm out.
pissed.
I mean, I think you would legitimately enjoy it. I mean, it is a good game. You'll see it's still placing decently high on my list. I mean, I enjoy the game. It's just, there's just, for every part that I think is like really, really good and transcendent, there's another part that I'm like, oh, wow, like we had better AI than this 8 years ago. Like, what the hell is happening? It's
AI not great.
It's the most mixed bag of a game I think I've ever played in my life, but with high highs and low ass lows. Let's see, it's great.
Yeah.
All right. So, biggest regret. Does anyone have anything for this?
I would very quickly say not playing 13 Sentinels earlier because it needed help this year. It apparently only sold like 300,000 copies, and it's like people needed to be supporting that game all year. I wish I
got it. I'm gonna play it. Just didn't get.
It's real freaking good, and I will talk about it later. It's kind of crazy that I haven't talked about it yet, but it just hasn't been enough to win a category. But I will talk about it.
You got something, Jacob?
Yeah, probably just playing too many 2020 games. I wish I had played more older games. So I think New Year's resolution is to be like Will. I'm going to play more older games.
Get through that backlog?
Yeah, definitely.
Man,
be a little bit more poor and just not play new games.
Exactly.
Darby and I did our 2021 anticipation list, and like, oh god, playing a bunch of old games not happening for me this year. Just too much good shit. For me, I just have Animal Crossing. Now, I just want to say the game's not bad or anything. I enjoyed my time with it immensely, but it's one of those things where I regret either buying it or just not playing it enough to kind of justify. I played like 20-something hours. It was not like a bad payment to play ratio, but the time you can get out of Animal Crossing, that is just very low.
No, yeah,
and I probably should have got it. Like, and I enjoy my time. I might go back to it at some point. Who knows? I could just dip in there.
I knew that was going to happen. I mean, you just play too many games. You play too many different games, too many new games or whatever. You don't like sit with one game for months and months, which is not a bad thing. It's great or whatever. But I just knew that Animal Crossing was not going to click with you in that way.
Yeah.
Even if you love the game, I kind of figured that you would taper off on it, but
still, damn good game.
Yeah, I think the only one I can really think about is, I guess I regret looking at, or like preemptively looking at a guide for Last of Us Part 2.
Oh no.
It was not totally intentional. I was looking at something, I can't remember exactly what I was looking at. I guess it was some sort of trophy thing, but on the trophy guide, it lists like, Seattle Day 1, Abby, and that's when I first realized that you were going to play as her again.
That sucks.
And that was like the only thing that was spoiled for me besides Joel's death, but that was still a surprise because I knew that, or because it was earlier than I expected. So I guess that was a little bit regrettable. It didn't like ruin the experience or anything like that for me. But if I could go back, I think that would have been a cool revelation for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see.
All right, we ready? Are we top 10 time?
No, we got a couple more.
Okay, we need to get through these pretty faster, probably.
Favorite trailer?
Well, my favorite trailer is the Sephiroth Final Smash Bros. Trailer. I think the last Final Fantasy, one of the last Final Fantasy 7 trailers was a close runner-up, but I think just as far as a trailer, the way that Sephiroth trailer is built, how you just don't know what's happening, and then like Sephiroth comes in here and like destroys the final boss of Smash to get in there. It's just insanity. It's just, there's so much love in that trailer. It's insane. So that's my favorite one.
Real quick, runner-up, the teaser for Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, which is made by the Lethal League guys, and it's pretty much a spiritual successor to Jet Set Radio.
Nice.
It looks sick. It's Jet Set Radio, and I'm excited for it. But my favorite trailer is definitely that first Bugsnax trailer. It's rare for me, I think, nowadays to get really sold on a game with a trailer, but that Bugsnax trailer, I was like, I need to play this game.
KKB.
Yeah, that helped a lot too. So yeah, Bugsnax was my favorite trailer.
Right. For me, runners up, Sephiroth and Smash, great. Like Darby said, the Kena trailer, just because, it's just a completely new IP that sold me for the most part, just based on the trailer, the visuals, and just what we saw, the gameplay and everything. They're neat. New Ratchet trailer, the debut trailer for that.
Yeah,
it did
mine
everything it
for
needed
you.
to do. Ratchet looks nice, showing the power of the PS5. Had the hook in with the female Wombats. Perfect. Favorite trailer, because Darby asked me about another trailer and made this thing eligible. The Pokemon music video, Gotcha, which is kind of just a series overview trailer of stuff in the past. Beautiful animation, catchy song. Gave me all the nostalgia feels. Whenever I feel a little down, I just pop that video on. I just feel good. Yeah.
Very
Let
well
me some
done.
Pokemon.
Nice.
But yeah.
I think my runner-up might be the Miles Morales trailer, partly because of how surprising it was that was going to be coming out and be a PS5 exclusive or not exclusive.
They announced it as exclusive at the time.
Well, sure, yes.
They lied.
But I think my award has to go to Deathloop. I think that showcase in that trailer is one of the best ones I can remember in recent history. So,
Yes. Best
Okay.
story narrative.
Yeah, I forgot we hadn't done best narrative yet.
big
This is actually
ones.
one of the,
I saved two of the biggest ones for the end, to kind of, so we're not just petering off.
are y'all okay if this goes a little over 2 hours? Because it probably will.
That's what I was expecting.
I figured at some point we do this long and just not worry about the general 2020 stuff until later.
Wait, what? No, I'm sorry.
I figure, this can just go as long as it kind of feels like naturally, and then we just do the other 2020 stuff just at a later date. The other one.
the media.
Yeah, the non-video.
Oh,
the
right.
not-
Okay. I thought you meant do the top 10 later day. I'm
No,
like,
no.
No. Okay.
You're not leaving this room.
It's like, no, I have you all here, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, best narrative. Who wants the. I think I started off like the last two.
I
Yeah.
can do it. I need you to go first on the last category, Darby.
Gotcha.
Okay, so a lot of great narratives this year. Runner-ups. I just want to shout out to Paper Mario. The actual narrative itself is pretty simple. It's just straightforward stuff. Well, Peach is made into a bad guy this time. I guess it's pretty different. Mind control, that stuff. But you got to save her, yada, yada. But the writing in Paper Mario is incredible. It is hilarious. Can't recommend the game enough for that reason alone. Persona. Come on, everyone knows that. I don't think I need to talk about that Persona stuff as much. Maybe that's more when we do our top 10s. Xenoblade, strong writing, good character moments, just some very epic moments, very climactic and writing and all that kind of stuff.
And I saw almost all of those moments.
Yes. Darby came in for all the crazy shit.
It's really funny.
It was great. Last of Us Part 2 obviously has great writing throughout, great acting, all that kind of stuff. I really like the risk they took with the narrative with killing Joel in the beginning of the game, having you play as Abby. I think it really works out at the end where, like I mentioned earlier, when I said Abby was my favorite character, that I kind of like Abby more than Ellie by the end of it. So I think that's a testament to how good the writing is in that game for that to happen. And the favorite story narrative is Final Fantasy VII Remake. Main reasons for that is kind of like Darby has been saying throughout this whole thing, like after the game originally released and all the compilation stuff, they kind of messed up people's characterizations. They fixed it in here, expanded on the stuff from the original game, and did very well with it. And then that holy what the fuck ending. Come on, I love my crazy anime shit. We all know this. So doing all that kind of stuff, like I said, Last of Us Part 2 took risks. This is taking some risks. We'll not have payoff for years to come. But I really love what they did with it. I'm sure Darry's going to have more to say about that. I'll probably jump in a little there.
100%.
So my runner-up for favorite narrative is Signs of the Sojourner for reasons that I've mentioned before in this podcast. But my favorite narrative is, without a doubt, Kentucky Route Zero.
Yeah.
One of the best narratives I have ever seen in a video game. It's certainly, I think, one of the best video games of like the past decade. It is a game that was released in separate acts over the course of like 7 years, and its narrative, I think, reflects that length of time, because this is a game that it's it's a magical realism adventure game where it kind of starts that you are this guy named Conway, and you're a delivery driver for an antique company, and you got to make a delivery to this address called 5 Dogwood Drive, and you find out that you can't find this address on any normal map. You have to take this kind of magical highway through the caves of Kentucky called the Zero. And then along the way, you're kind of meeting various characters. You're picking up different people are leaving, and you're kind of really just exploring all these different locations and characters. And Kentucky Route Zero's narrative, I think, shares a lot with my favorite game from last year, which is Disco Elysium. Both games, they're kind of set in these kind of fantasy settings, but they are very much about like our world and the problems in our current world. But they're also very different too. I think Disco is a lot about this one neighborhood, this one community, and it's kind of directly talking about various ideologies from neoliberalism to communism to fascism, and how those ideologies have impacted this one location, which kind of serves as like a microcosm. With Kentucky Route Zero, like I said, you're kind of going around to all these places, and you're witnessing how capitalism pretty much destroys, I think, communities and affects both people and places, everything around us, and even in us too. There's a lot of talk in this game about how shame and guilt around debt, the way that consumes one character in particular is very powerful. And it's a really interesting game in the way it talks about, when we think of like, jobs being lost, or, like ghost towns, or like old mining towns or timber towns, we don't really think about how, we think about like the people who worked in those industries who lost their jobs, but we don't really think about the community itself, and how, when communities like that die, people aren't just losing their jobs, they're losing their community, their social connections, which is also their identity. And it's a game that I think explores that to its ultimate conclusion. And yeah, just a very strong narrative.
Awesome. Well, this category, man, this damn category, I can't stress enough how close. There were 3 games. They are just in a completely different level than the others. And legitimately, all 3 of these games have been in every possible order at some point while I was deliberating this. So that's how like damn close they are, and I could probably be talked into any other order as well. But the order that I have these 3 games in now, and I'm even like fighting my own things now, is number 3, 13 Sentinels. And I can't stress enough that this should be number 1 on any other year. This game, like, you might not know a whole lot about this game. The way that they tell the narrative, like this game, it's like basically half like visual novel, half strategy, like top-down strategy game. And those 2 sections are like completely separated off. You can do them in whatever order you want. You can be like, I'm going to do some of the strategy, I'm going to do some of this. And even within the visual novel thing, it's not like a static image. You can actually walk around, but it's 2D and it's pretty simple. You're mostly just reading text. That's like the biggest thing you're doing. But there are 13 protagonists, and you can do all of their stories in whatever order you want, and they all interact with each other, but you can just unravel the story however you want. And they tell the story just completely out of order. There's like a bunch of different time periods that go from like the World War II all the way to like the distant future. And you are like constantly like, you'll get a little taste of the future and it'll send you back to the past, and then it'll send you to the 80s, then it'll send you to here. And the story just like very slowly unravels in this very unconventional, very experimental way that I just dug so much. It was like, I love very like experimental, weirdly told stories, and this is like one of the best ones I've ever seen. It felt like reading a book in a lot of ways. And the story, I can't compliment it enough in the sense that like the story should be a convoluted mess with like time travel, all this other like crazy sci-fi things. Like this story is absolute bananas, but it's told in such a cool way and like told so smartly and thoughtfully that I was understanding it, and I was kind of amazed that I was understanding it because of how bonkers it is. And I literally just finished it like right before we started recording this, and I do think I started to lose the narrative by the end of because it's just so complicated. But it's a game that I could probably go look at like 6 hours of YouTube videos to slowly unravel what's going on. And I can't really sell this game well without spoiling it, and I'm not going to because I really want y'all to play it. But some of the twists and turns in this game, the sheer amount of times I would get done with a character's story and I would just say, "What?" or the out loud be like, "How? What the hell is going on?" Phenomenal.
Yeah, it sounds like a choose your own adventure novel, like on steroids.
Yes. And the fact that you can unravel the story in whatever way you want. Writing this must have been hell. Like keeping all of this straight. And like, you know, people can, like I said, and like y'all probably play it and find things out in a different order than I do, but I think it's all great because you'll see a character that you haven't gotten that far with, but you'll see them in a scenario and you're like, wait a minute, how the hell did you get there? So you go over to their story. It's like, I want to know how this happened. It's just very good. Very good.
I would love to see the outline for that game in the writer's room. As they were, yeah.
It's the string.
Sounds pretty crazy.
I'm about to probably spend all night tonight like looking up videos of people explaining some of the shit. It's bonkers. It's crazy. My number 2 is Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Traitor.
Now listen, I mean, again, these 3 games are as close can possibly freaking be, and it's like flipped so many times. But when I compare Final Fantasy VII to The Last of Us Part 2, which is my number 1 with the narratives, I think Final Fantasy VII, part of the thing I love about Final Fantasy VII, above a lot of other things, like some of the things that does like heavy lifting there, is the music and the characters and the design of the world, the setting. All of that I love more than Last of Us by a long stretch. But when I think about the actual narrative and what they were setting out to do with the narrative, while I think Final Fantasy VII Remake is obviously my favorite game of all time, it's incredible.
Spoilers.
I think there are moments where I could go back and be like, okay, yeah, this was kind of unnecessary, or this was kind of this person's motivations don't make sense. There's little things like that, or there's some things where it's like, in the grand scheme of things, while I think there's a lot of unique parts of it, it does fall into some, like, I don't know, sci-fi tropey things or whatever. The Last of Us, just the way that it made me care about those characters and just some of the like little character moments, and especially Abby is such a big part of that. But the Abby and Lev, and like when we're gonna get to like favorite gaming moments, some of those, I just think that like you talk about taking risks, the fact that it made me feel the way that like the end of the first Last of Us made me feel like for pretty much a whole game. And it's like, maybe other people predicted it. I really did not expect that this is the way this game was going. And I think that this was a very unsafe way for The Last of Us to continue on. But the more I think about that game, the more I just like, I like the narrative. It really does work for me on like that well. It's one of the best narratives I think I've ever had, told in a video game. It's just very impactful. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I would say Last of Us Part 2, but I don't have any more to say.
Sorry, I know I just rambled on for an hour on narrative, but that was the hardest category for me.
I feel you.
Jesus, those 3 games.
Also, Jacob, you have convinced me to try Kentucky Route Zero.
Oh man,
so.
Dude, you're an English teacher, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you would. It's so like it uses so many amazing like literary devices. It's like legitimately well written.
Yeah. It looks pretty cool from what I was looking at.
Yeah. The main like company in the game is called the Consolidated Power Company, and it's kind of like a double. you see what I'm saying? It's
nice.
like yeah. It's so smart.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah, I saw that it started in 2013.
Yeah.
Like the first act.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Wild.
Dang. Yeah.
And it was kickstarted like before that big wave of Kickstarters, and it was kickstarted for like I think like $8,000 or something incredibly low. But it's
dang.
Yeah.
I think that might be next on my list. Now that I have 13 Sentinels, which is way too long, by the way, way too long of a game, but it's still very good. But now that that's out of the way, it was like 40 hours for me.
Yeah.
which I mean, maybe not. It's just like by the end, especially since the strategy part is not. It's okay, but the story is where it's So. I'll get into that more later.
Final category: best gaming moments. In parentheses, S for moments. We have runners. Okay, Darby.
Oh, it's me. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll just quickly go through because this is the one that had the most shout outs. But so quick shout outs. The dance/dress sequence in Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Same.
Come
Fantastic.
on, let's freaking go. They nailed it so hard. It's just so good. I'm kind of putting the entire Jesse mission in Final Fantasy VII because I think that's like probably my favorite mission in the game, and what it added to the game was just absolutely insane. Barrett's speech after the plate fell, I think, was very impactful to me. Joel's death, completely hands on my head, absolutely it just completely took me off guard. Runner up was the specifically the moment where Abby says, "You are my people" to Lev when he's like, "Your people are doing this." You like that line choked me up so much, and it was just really, really, really good. But my number one absolutely was there's so many crazy moments in Final Fantasy VII Remake, but I think the one that will always stand out to me the most and stick with me was not a crazy moment at all. It was getting off the train after the bombing run mission and just walking into Sector 7 and to have this area that was just so important to my childhood and just seeing it completely 3D and the music swelling like that, and I just sat the controller down and I just teared up. It was just, I'll always remember that moment where I'm like, this is happening. It was just my childhood encapsulated in the most perfect way. It was just may never be beat in the game. It was great.
All right, Jacob.
All right, so my runner-up for best gaming moment would be the ending to Kentucky Route Zero. I was not following Kentucky Route Zero through its whole 7-year development history, but even playing it just all in one sitting, the ending is Act 5 is not what I would have, or anyone I think would have expected for that game, but it worked really, really well. It's, like I said, it's an ultimate kind of conclusion to the themes of the game, and I could spoil the ending right here, right now, because it's so absurd in a way. I'm not, but it's it's not what is actually happening, but what this final moment represents that was so powerful that it moved me to tears. So
hell yeah,
runner up for best gaming moment. But my actual best sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna, have you played Virginia by chance?
I have not. I know that game though.
I would say give that a shot, because I think you're describing some stuff that makes me think you would like that a lot. So
I'll make sure to check it out. But my actual best gaming moment is definitely beating the final boss in Hades. That game, it's a roguelike, which is not a genre that is probably known for its strong narrative, but Hades does a really smart thing in how it ties its narrative to the experience of playing a roguelike. And as you know, no one beats the final boss in a roguelike on their first try. And it took me multiple attempts to beat that final boss. And when I did, I was shaking. It was a phenomenal moment, and the way the narrative kind of synced up with that moment was really well done. It's a game that I think is very holistic in its design, where everything from the narrative to the gameplay to the art to the music all kind of reinforces and strengthens each other. And that moment of being the final boss, which is not even the game's ending, is really, really good. So, favorite gaming moment.
Hell yeah.
All right. So for me, what I got here, I got just generally any climactic moment in Xenoblade. Those were epic. Darby's
Any
thing.
what in Xenoblade? I'm sorry.
Climactic. scene.
Climactic. Yes.
Darby's there for most of them. He can testify like crazy.
Yeah, I was every time I was like, wow, this is actually pretty cool.
Again, Wii game. Touched up some, but still, all this movement and stuff, choreography.
Oh yeah,
had to be on the Wii.
No, yeah, it's that game is insanely impressive for how old it is.
Finding Easter eggs in Astro with Darby.
Yes.
Those were fun. Just
One
looking
of
around,
the
like,
best.
oh, that's what that is. That's fun.
You're right. That should be a Mind Tale and everything. That was definitely one of the best, my most fun experiences of the year.
Yep. Ellie sparing Abby just felt good. You're like, yes, our girl is safe. And then at the end where you see the boat on the beach, like, They did it. Yeah, like I said, Honeybee in for Final Fantasy VII. Everything surrounding the Final Fantasy VII twist was great. Just the stuff going there. It's like, oh, what the fuck is happening? Oh, sex life, what's going on?
Yep.
And then just all the discussion
conversations,
afterwards is
yeah.
just the most fun. End of Ori.
Yes.
Everything surrounding that and
yes.
figuring out, I guess, who the narrator is.
Yes. So well done. Good
Yes,
lord, so well done.
I cried.
So well
But my favorite gaming moment being the Nuzlocke.
Hey,
we did this year.
That was that. All right, fair. Yes, absolutely.
Pulling out Jimmy Buffett, using that man, taking those hits, taking the.
Yeah, I should go back and watch that video. It was only like 30 minutes, the end of it or whatever.
I kind of Nuzlocke in general because we did most of that this year, but I'll just take it to that ending.
I wasn't even thinking about that. Yes.
So it's a Darby, just to make sure you up if they do a Gen 4 remake, doing another one.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Fuck yeah.
That was a blast. I don't really want to play Pokemon in other contexts, like on my own, but like in that context, I'm all for it.
Fuck yeah,
It's a lot of fun.
Will.
Hell yeah, dude.
I think gameplay wise, whenever you're doing your gun at the gun bench in Last of Us and you have an enemy come and attack you from behind, I think that was one of the. I mean, there was a lot of times in that game where I realized how much I loved it, but that point in particular really stood out to me, making sure that you're always on guard, kind of. Also, Last of Us Part 2, at the end, I don't know if I can forgive you, but I'd like to try. I think that was the perfect ending. Really well done. Definitely made me tear up. And I guess the only other thing I would kind of shout out. Oh, wait, no, two more things. Detroit, the title sequence. I love Detroit.
Nice. Hell yeah.
I know that y'all don't necessarily click with that type of game, but I really
like Beyond Two Souls. I mean, I want to give Detroit a chance, especially now that it's on that PlayStation thing for PS5.
Yeah.
PlayStation Plus.
And the title sequence in particular, I don't know, man. Something about that song really struck me and has really just kept with me during this time. And then I guess finally it's just creating a Animal Crossing island with my wife. That was pretty cool.
Nice.
Hell yeah. Absolutely.
Sounds like a winner right there.
Awesome.
All right. Finally getting into them top 10s about 2 hours in.
I apologize, everyone. This has been a lot of fun, but
We knew this was going to happen.
Oh yeah.
as long as everyone's on the same page.
All right, so what order do we want to go about with this?
Yeah, I'm sure some of this we won't be talking about as much because we've already talked about it a lot. But there, yeah. I mean, we can keep snaking it, I guess, if you want. Like, honorable mentions all the way through into 10. We can go back and forth or do whatever, however the hell we want.
Okay, just to make sure, I guess, so we know. Will, you've already done your honorable mentions, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you can just jump on when we do 10.
Okay.
So right now, let's just us do our honorable mentions. I'll go first. I don't have a whole lot to say about them. I have 3 honorable mentions, and they are Fall Guys, Sackboy's Big Adventure, and Among Us. All really good games. Sackboy I haven't played enough.
That's why it's not on my list
we've
whatsoever.
only played half of it, but I still do think even when I beat it, this is probably around the area it'll shake out at. And Fall Guys was very fun. I think it didn't stick with me as much as some other people. Like I kind of got to the end where I was like, okay, I'm not, it's like I kind of seen everything. But for that moment in time, it was very fun. And Among Us, kind of the same thing. Haven't played it enough, but it's very cool thing.
Replaying it more definitely would have been in my old games category.
Yeah. I'm putting it in here. I mean, it's everyone. It's whatever. It basically came out in 2020.
Or it would have been somewhere. Just in general.
That's my honorable mentions.
I didn't really write down any honorable mentions, but I guess I do want to shout out a few games that I touched but did not spend enough time with to finish or have any real opinion on. Currently playing Paradise Killer, which I touched for a few hours ago in the fall, and that's a really interesting game. Kind of an open world detective game with the aesthetic of like vaporwave. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, I've seen that game, and this was one I'd be into. I'm interested for sure.
Yeah,
It's the soundtrack great, I think.
Yeah, and I put a few hours into Moon RPG Remix, which is an old game that came out in the 90s. It was released, I think, for the first time in America on the Switch this year, and it's kind of a deconstruction of the JRPG genre. I think Toby Fox has cited it as like a influence on him and Undertale, so I'd like to go back and play more of that.
All right, get through my 15 through 11. Number 15, Fall Guys. Kind of same Darby. I think I enjoyed it generally more than Darby and played more kind of on my own, but yeah, I didn't have the staying power, unfortunately, with it. Might be better with Season 3 out. Looks like they added some more levels.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind going back into and seeing. 14, Cyberpunk 2077. Don't must say, we talked about it during the disappointment category. 13, Dreams. Had a lot of fun with this. Art stream, the main story mode that Media Molecule made, fantastic. Reason it's this low is I did not put in much time with it as I wanted to. It's something I've gone in, dip my toe in every now and then. Want to go in there, play more VR games, dreams, whatever. Do all that. Number 12, Spider-Man Miles Morales. Probably lower than a lot of people who played it because this game people seem to like this game a lot more than I do. I like the game a lot, but not exactly the game of the year.
Chad Michael and it's just the gasps.
A lot of people gasp. Probably when I put Cyberpunk that low too. But I had a lot of fun with it. It just felt like it's a lot like Spider-Man, the original Spider-Man. So it just kind of felt a little old getting towards the end. But the story is fantastic, and I'm glad this game is made so we can kind of get Miles' story going. Number 11, Resident Evil 3. Another game, or this is the game I seem to generally like more than other people, partly because I did not play the original 3. I've not played as many Resident Evils, and I get that. I played this very close to 2, and this seemed to complement it very well, kind of close together, so that kind of helped shape my opinion. I do agree it's a little short, especially for a $60 game. I felt like it justified the price for me personally, but I really like it. Jill's great. This should be her design going forward.
Yeah. I think we'll see RE2 and RE3 bundled together in future releases, and that's probably a good value to have.
That's a great $60 right now.
Yeah.
Even though you could buy them both for like probably $30 at this point.
Dope. Okay.
Right.
Sorry, we're at 10. Stop.
I was thinking maybe we could continue to circle Will does his 10 and just keep on going.
Oh,
in the
yes,
circle.
yes. Will, what is your
number 10?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to put Animal Crossing at number 10. It's not something that, I don't know. I played for probably a couple months, like pretty regularly, along with Mitchell. It wasn't anything that I necessarily like ever loved or was super into, but it was just really fun being a part of like the moment, I guess, and just talking to my wife, who isn't necessarily in the games, just like talking to her about these mechanics and we have to wait until this month to catch this fish or whatever, and just like finding stuff out about that game together was super fun. So I did enjoy Animal Crossing while it was a part of my quarantine life.
Animal Crossing is like a weird game to rate in these kind of rankings, just in general.
Alrighty. So my number 10, this game we hadn't talked about yet, is Valorant.
Oh.
This is a game. It's obviously it's like a merge between Overwatch and CS:GO. I never played any CS:GO. I don't play very many competitive games. It's mostly the ones that Alex has brought me into.
CS:GO is intense.
Very intense. And Valorant is very intense. Like, I love Overwatch to death, and I feel competent enough in Overwatch to, I've played hundreds and hundreds of hours of Overwatch. Valorant is not one that I'm going to be into as much as that, because I think it's a lot more, like, the skill ceiling is a lot higher. It's a lot easier that, like, if you're bad, you can tank a team, and you can, like, you can be carried a lot less and everything. But the game is very, very fun, and it's very, very well designed. And when you do have moments of greatness, I'm very bad at it, but when I do have moments of greatness, the high that I got on, like, sneaking up on people and, like, shooting them, it's a lot more sneaky than Overwatch is just, like, chaos shooting and everyone's bullet sponges. This is, like, you die very fast, and it's a lot more of, like, crouching and, like, sneaking around the corners and everything. And whenever I would get someone off guard and shoot them, or, like, if I was the last one left and I took down 3 people to win the round, But that was like some of the biggest highs I got this year was from playing Valorant. So even though it's not necessarily my type of shooter, I still really had a lot of enjoyment from it this year. So very well made game.
My number 10 is Yakuza Like a Dragon. This game, I mean, I like the Yakuza series a lot. Like a Dragon changes up the series quite a bit. So you have a new protagonist, a new setting, but I think the biggest change is, whereas the old Yakuza games are kind of like beat 'em ups, this new game is a party-based, turn-based JRPG.
Yeah.
Straight up. And I was a little skeptical, I think, when this was first announced, and just because JRPG mechanics don't speak to me as much as like beat 'em ups do. I mean, I have my favorite JRPGs, but it's not a genre that's like my cup of tea all the time. And unfortunately, I don't think Like a Dragon really changed my opinion. I got about 30 hours in, and I think the gameplay was kind of starting to wear on me. It definitely has the vibe of like this is somebody's first attempt at making a JRPG, and so there are parts to it that don't really work quite well. But I think it's still exciting to see a series like this that has its formula to really strike out in a really bold new direction. And so I kind of commend them for doing that. And even though the reason why it's a JRPG is kind of tied to its protagonist, he grew up playing Dragon Quest, and so that's just how he interprets reality. And so I wouldn't want them, even though like I wasn't too hot on these JRPG mechanics, I would not want them to go back to the beat 'em up for you know Like a Dragon 2. I think they should stick with this. And I mean, it's a series that is built off of like reusing and refining assets and mechanics, and so I think there's a lot of room for growth with Yakuza Like a Dragon. And I think its narrative is also really interesting. It covers topics that you don't normally see in like AAA video games. You have topics of like poverty and homelessness and sex work, labor, and immigration. And, you know, admittedly, it doesn't cover these topics like 100% perfectly. There's a lot of conflicting messages, I'd say, but it is cool to see, you know, a game like directly talk about these issues in contemporary society. So I think it's a flawed game, but it has a lot of positives and also really good characters too. So that's Yakuza Like a Dragon.
Nice. My number 10 is Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. This is a Musou game, marketed as being a direct prequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It is not really that.
No.
It starts that way and then goes into timey-wimey stuff to, you know, solidify it. Oh, this is just a fun side story type thing and not the direct prequel, unfortunately. It's Zelda, so it could still be canon. Who knows? But regardless of that, I enjoyed the story for what it was. I think the fact that I had some feelings that it was going to go in that direction probably helped me go into it a little bit. Like those expectations, like, okay, there's a good chance it's going to go into this. But I enjoyed it for what it did. It's a Zelda story still and a Musou story. So it's not the most grand story ever or anything, or the craziest story. It's just a kind of more simple story, you know, with some hype moments and good character moments. What I like about it is it's more of Zelda's story compared to most other Legend of Zelda games. So that is a plus for me, where Zelda is like the main character. Love that. For its gameplay, it is a Musou game. So, you know, some people will love it. A lot of people will hate it. I'm in the love category. I think it did a good job of using the general Musou stuff, adding some Zelda stuff in there, making it more even Breath of the Wild-esque. The presentation's great. It's like, yes, this is Breath of the Wild, a Breath of the Wild Musou game. And just really well, did a very good job of making the characters different. Just, you know, a lot of fun. Bring on the Musous. Persona 5 Strikers, I'm ready for you.
Let's see. My number 9 and number 8, I would have put higher if I hadn't platinumed them, because it made me start hating them as I was playing. But for number 9, I'm going to put Control. Control was a very good game. I think it had like some serious performance issues, at least on my PS4,
yes.
that made me drop it quite a bit. But I did really enjoy it for what it was. I thought the shooting was really fun. All the powers were awesome. the aesthetic was pretty trippy. Hey, Mitchell. The aesthetic was pretty trippy. I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I mean, the performance issues were really quite terrible in parts. And like I said, because for whatever reason I was determined to platinum that game, I had to do a lot of stuff.
Jake were just shaking. Like, I got to that burnout point just trying to beat the game, much less platinuming it.
Yeah, I can't even remember exactly what parts it was that were the toughest part of the platinum, but I just remember, like, honestly, I think a lot of it was navigating the setting. God, it was just a lot of time spent just trying to get around, and that's actually definitely part of my number 8. But we can wait for that. So Control.
Yeah, I'm there with you with Control. It's a game that, like, I spent a lot of time playing it because I was just so intrigued by the world and its visual style, but going after like all the side quests and stuff, just having to deal with like those random encounters just burned me out a lot on that game. But I still really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's another talk about just conflicting games. How much I love that game, but also how much it pisses me off. It's like pretty equal parts of both. And
well, since I'm the only one here who's now have not played Control, I should play it obviously on the Switch.
There you go.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, well, there was times playing PS4 that I was literally looking at JPEGs. I was looking
Darby,
at like static
the
images
power
because the
of the
frame rate
cloud.
was so bad.
It really is, like, I know, like, I haven't played Cyberpunk, but it really was like one of the most shocking things I've seen when my game just like froze up. It's like, what is happening?
There were certain areas I just knew if I walked in that area, it's gonna just completely break the game. It's like, rough. My number 9, kind of similar to Jeff's Miles Morales, maybe seeming like blasphemy to some people. My number 9 is Hades. And I think this is tragically low. And like, again, if I was at a site doing a very objective, what's the best game or whatever, this would be like so much higher. Hades being this low for me was mostly because of me not vibing with the genre type of thing, where it's like, I love this game to death. I've talked about how much I love it, and I do not regret buying it whatsoever. I've gotten so much enjoyment out of the like a decent number of hours I've played. But I just got so tired of fighting the same bosses over and over again. And I know that is roguelikes, it is, but like I just started getting to the point where I would get to the end of a run, I would like get really far out there. I was like almost at the end of the game, I would die, and then it's like, okay, I'm done for the I don't want to have to go back through all these bosses again. So just inevitably I ended up just like, I wasn't having fun because I just wanted to get back to where I was, and I didn't want to put in that time. It's more of a me
That's
thing.
what I'm worried about.
Yeah.
I think. Like, I mean, I love Supergiant, but I am worried about. I've never really tried anything like that, I don't think, and I'm worried that I'm just going to get too frustrated and want to continue instead of having to go through all that crap again. So, but I do plan on picking it up.
Yeah, that's where I got. I mean, I know a lot of other people like didn't feel that at all. They just like had that drive to keep doing it. I think it's just it's a different people, different type of styles that you like. I mean, I think it's a testament to how good the game is that I still love it to death, even despite that. But I just couldn't finish it because of that.
Yeah. They have a God mode in the options menu that if you're getting burnt out on it, maybe you could switch that on, and that will help you get through the game a lot faster.
I did end up turning that on at the end, but even that was like, it was slowly enough because I think it's a good easier mode where it doesn't immediately make things incredibly it like the more you die on the easy mode, the easier the game gets, basically. But but it is very, 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 very well done. Like we said, it's like the most balanced game I think I've maybe ever played. It's crazy.
My number 9 is Carry On, the reverse horror game that was published by Devolver Digital. The studio is called, I think, Phobia Game Studios. I believe it's their first game. Carry On, it's kind of a game that I was drawn to it for like pretty simple reasons. And it's like, I want to play as this kind of crazy looking monster that's kind of like a cross between The Thing and The Blob. And it's a Metroidvania in a way, and you're going through these screens, and you're kind of almost, you're acquiring powers and almost reenacting scenes from like classic horror movies. Scientists will start running away and you can like rip the doors off of hinges and like come after them and like grab them and swing them around like a chew toy. And it's a really, I think, a satisfying game. It's about 5 hours, which I believe is the perfect length for a game like that. And as I thought more about Carry On, this game came out, I believe, in July. I think I played it in September or August. And the thing with like monsters is like monsters in media, it's not just a scary thing. Like they're usually representative of something. Like the zombies in Night of the Living Dead, they aren't just zombies. They actually mean something. Godzilla, was created by nuclear weapons. So, I mean, it's pretty obvious meaning there. And I think with Carry On, it becomes apparent that like the people who were containing this monster, were not, it was some sort of government agency and they were messing with something that they should not have been messing with. And I think it shows how, I think with the game, you kind of come to understand that like these people, this bureaucracy or this agency had no interest in the well-being of society. And I think, playing this game around August when, there were talks or when new COVID relief checks kind of fell through, it was a really cathartic game in the sense that it's kind of an expression of frustration towards those in power who, again, have no interest in the well-being or disregard the well-being of society at large.
It was a good time of the year to rip apart rip apart people in power, government people.
Indeed, and the ending I think is so perfect. It's really in tune with the endings to I think a lot of like horror movies from the 70s. So
Sweet.
Just a great game.
Sweet.
My number 9 is Shantae and the Seven Sirens. Shout out to Shantae right there. Yeah, this is if you listen to us for a while, Darby and I at some point during the podcast both play Shantae Half Genie Hero.
Hell yep.
Loved it. I'm sure this game is on Darby's list somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah, this goes back to more of a Metroidvania style. So it's more straight up one in this.
Yeah.
Does it really well. You have this big map, obviously going through it. But Shantae is kind of more of a laid back Metroidvania. Not really as much like high stakes. Just kind of more, you go through this. It's cute. It's fun. You get all these cool transformations, which I'm always a fan of. Just having all these different abilities and stuff you kind of get throughout the game. So, you got to save all these sirens, go through it, do the story and all that. Some of the boss fights are just not good, unfortunately.
Yeah,
that's my main
that is
criticism.
the biggest thing that brings it down.
Yeah,
sure.
that is my main criticism for it. But overall, if you're just looking for a nice, jolly time with some fun characters, I can definitely recommend this game.
Yeah, and I can jump in here and get most of what I'm going to say out of it and go fast when I get to it. I think, like you said, it being a laid-back Metroidvania, I think this is the perfect genre to have kind of a just easygoing version of, because we are saturated with Metroidvanias right now, like all over the damn place, like some of the best of all time, like Hollow Knight and things like that. So it's actually kind of cool to just have Shantae be a game that's like, yeah, you can just play this in like a few days or whatever, and it's just like warm and jolly. It's like engaging enough to where you do have to use your brain some, but you're also not going to be like stumped for an hour trying to figure out what puzzle to do or whatever. It's like just enough to where it's like, it's just very warm and cozy and a nice, like, not every game needs to be like gruelingly hard. This was just a very, especially the time that I played it when the pandemic was getting really bad and everything is like this, it's like, this felt very nice,
Yeah, and where the puzzles, you get all these transformations and stuff. As a Metroidvania, you go through, you unlock new areas. It's the stuff you're doing is simple enough to when you get a new power, you're immediately like, oh, you can instantly think of half a dozen places that you can use this new ability to either unlock secrets or get farther in the actual game.
Yeah.
You're not really running around. It's like, okay, so where can I use this?
Just the pacing was also just really, really good with the pacing of unlocking things. Very, very good game.
Cool. Does anyone want to guess what my number 8 is after saying it has performance issues and I hated it after platinuming it?
Jedi Fallen Order?
Yeah.
Hey!
That's incredible. That's
What was you
awesome.
repeating last year?
Well, I mean,
What's that?
Minus the platinuming course.
huh? Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, you're basically saying all the same things I said last year for these
Oh, really?
2 games, yeah, where it's like they have good elements, and I also fell through the world 18 times.
Yeah, I never had like any horrible glitches, I guess, in that way in Jedi, but I did have some major stuttering again, just like Control. And I actually maybe I just wasn't paying attention to what people were saying about that game, but I was like shocked that I hadn't heard more about that in Jedi, because it was like really prevalent.
I think almost all the press people played it on pros and everything, and it ran a lot better.
Or PCs.
But like almost everyone else I saw, like when I saw like people in the comments, they're like, "Yeah, this game barely freaking functions for me," and I'm like, "Yeah, same."
Yeah, again, I really did enjoy this game even with that, but I did platinum this one as well. And dude, the map in this game is one of the most frustrating things to ever go through.
Yep. I hated the backtracking. It was so fucking obnoxious.
The backtracking in that game is just astonishingly bad.
Yes.
Like, if you ever want to go back to a place that you've been before, I mean, there is no fast travel if y'all didn't play the game. So you have to literally go through the entire level in the pre-described way that it wants you to go before you can go and get the collectible you missed.
And it's not even like in the cool Dark Souls way where there's like really cool shortcuts that you can find. Like, sometimes kind of, but it's usually just one way. And like you said, it's not just running through a corridor. You have to do the acrobatic puzzle thing to get there, and then do it again to get back, and do it again when the story tells you to go there again, and then do it again to come back. Most of the game is spent traversing the same areas over and over again. It's like,
some of the planets, it's not like, and it's not always like easy knowing where to go either. Like, some of the planets are really confusing if you can't remember how you got there in the first place. So I had to like watch a couple guides on how to even get back to certain parts in the game so I could pick up something. So yeah, I mean, I really did enjoy the story. I thought it was super exciting having a Star Wars game like that again. But by the end, I was very happy to delete that off my console.
You ready for the Ubisoft one?
I am. That is exciting to me.
Nice. My number 8. Deciding between number 8 and number 7 was very, very hard, but I think this is where I'm landing. Number 8 is Haven.
Okay.
I've talked a good bit about it. I think it was just the story and everything that was told here was like really, really good in that relationship, but also just the fact that it drew me in with just loving this couple together and just like seeing them, like the small moments of them, like just come, because it's kind of a resource thing where you're going out and collecting resources to build things on your ship and to do things like that, and you're like slowly building this thing out. But just like you kind of get in a cycle of like you go out and resource get, you come back, you cook food, and then like you see them talk and do different activities at night, and you go through like this daily cycle. And you just like the little moments of them like talking to each other and everything were like really, really, really well done. It's all voice acted, and both of the voice actors are really portray those characters very well. But then like I was really impressed with the backdrop, like the what's actually going on in the story in the background was a lot more interesting than I thought it was going to be. It's like legitimately just straight up really interesting sci-fi where you start to hear about, they start to talk about like the society that they fled to be alone on this planet, and like you start figuring out that it's a very like kind of totalitarian government type thing or whatever that like forces people into like you're like forced to marry someone else. Basically, it's like arranged marriages for everyone basically, and like just where that goes was just in a way more interesting direction than I thought it would, and I was like very interested to see each next part of the story, even though the story is pretty small and it's very like slowly like you see their relationship a lot, and their relationship is the main focus. And then it's weird because it has like a sci-fi plot that you would expect from a sci-fi crazy action game, but the crazy action sci-fi stuff is happening somewhere else basically, and you're like they left that they left that this is after that basically, but they're still kind of on the run, so it's cool. It's it's a unique,
it sounds like a really neat game.
Yeah, I think it's good. Like I said, the resource things get a little tedious. It's about a 10-hour game. It probably should be less, but it's still really good.
All right, so my number 8 is a game that I have not talked about yet. It is Haunted Cities Volume 4. So Haunted Cities Volume 4 is by a creator called Kitty Horror Show. She is the creator of 2016's Anatomy, which is an indie horror game that I really, really love. That game is kind of a it's kind of an exploration on why, homes, which is something that often a symbol of security and comfort, so frequently are featured in like kind of imagination as haunted spaces as well. So how a symbol of comfort can kind of become a symbol of fear or isolation. But Haunted Cities Volume 4 is a collection of 4 short experimental games that she previously released on Patreon. And they're all very different in their kind of style and their visual aesthetic. But they're all kind of connected by her kind of characteristic heavy atmosphere. There's not like a reliance on jump scares, really good use of lo-fi visuals and audio cues. And also her writing is some of the most vivid and evocative horror writing I've seen in video games. It's stuff that will kind of like live on in your subconscious that I think about every now and then. I'm not going to go through every one of the games, but the one that probably spoke to me the most is called Exclusion Zone. It's a first-person game. You're kind of like in this very dead grayscale environment, and there's an abandoned temple in this exclusion zone. It's clear that there's like radiation coming out from this temple. And you kind of walk to various points around the temple and you get scenes of, what this temple may have looked like back in the day when people once lived here, and kind of anthropological or archaeological interpretations of this site. And it's not until you get to you go to the top of the tower, which is kind of the epicenter of this radiation, and the prose completely changes direction. It becomes first person, very personal, and it kind of tells this story of this deity that was brought to this temple from a different land, and the people here wanted to worship this deity, but they could not give the deity what it wanted. And it's a game that it really interests me on an academic level because I think it touches on the limits of anthropological and archaeological interpretation, where you're studying these dead cultures, these lost societies, and there's you're only getting so much information from an archaeological record, and it really touches on how some of that interpretation can fail to capture these really powerful sociocultural feelings and dynamics that just aren't represented in a material way. And it touches on my job and my academic interests, and so it was a game that I found very intriguing. So that's Haunted Cities Volume 4.
Awesome. I'll have to listen back through this and write down all of these different games. So that's a good one.
All right, my number 8. Talking about bug snacks, baby. As I mentioned before, this game was a very big surprise for me in a lot of ways, particularly with the characters and the writing of it. Like, just finding out about these characters, why they came to the island, and why they left the village, which the setup to the story is, all the villagers pretty much have left. You got to bring them back and all that kind of stuff. Figuring out why they did that and stuff is a lot of fun, and just the overarching mystery of what exactly is going on at Snagtooth Island. Why are some people missing and all that kind of stuff. Figuring that is fun. Actual catching the bug snacks is a lot of fun. Just the puzzle element of it. It's just kind of like Pokemon, especially in the way that these bug snacks say their name all around when they're bunching around, and when you capture them, the speaker on the controller says their name as well. So really fun game. That's very surprising. Since everyone here is planning on playing it, I'm not going to say what the big twist is. But it was a very interesting one, and I did not expect it to go there. But yeah, it's a game that will keep you guessing for sure. You might be able to figure it out, but the mystery there is good. It's a weird clashing of vibes because the nice little Pokemon S5s and then these deeper things. Because it does have some adult themes, and like I said, and just how great the LGBTQ representation in this game is. Yeah, it's a very surprising game all the way around, to the point where I was so surprised by a lot of ways. I don't know if they marketed it completely right. Because it's not that clear unless you played the game that this stuff
was it the weird twists?
No, not the twist.
Oh, okay.
With the characters and stuff.
Okay.
Like,
Gotcha.
That's what I've heard. Like the characters are more important to the story than the trailers would have led you to believe.
yeah.
Gotcha.
So some people may be like, oh, we're just catching these food-looking things. I mean, that sounds fun, but they get old.
I mean, that's why I think I had an assumption of a almost Animal Crossing-esque. Like, it's more
Building
about
a
the
village,
activity
yeah.
of building this thing, less of a narrative being told you. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, like I said, they could potentially marketed that better because the whole twist is one thing, but being more character driven is not exactly a twist.
I agree with you. I agree with that.
All right. My number 7 is Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons.
Ooh, I need to play that game. Yep.
Yeah. So me and one of my best friends from high school, he's not really like that much of a gamer. He's like a Warzone guy, and we still play that sometimes. But he had EA Play, and A Way Out was on there, so we ended up playing A Way Out over the summer, and that was super fun. And so that kind of introduced me, I guess, into Jose Fares.
Joseph Fares.
Hazelight is their studio name. Is that right?
Yeah,
That sounds right.
and so I looked into Brothers, and as I was looking at it, I thought it looked really cool and really interesting. And I'm super glad that I played this game. It's a really short, tight experience that I really appreciate. There's no dialogue in the game, which is really interesting. So everything you're picking up from the environment or actions, which is really fun. You really have to be paying attention. And I don't know, it's just a delightful game to play on your own. It doesn't hurt, I guess, that the way you play is just so different than other games where you're controlling each player with each stick. So it's really simple, but I think the story and the characters as well are just really strong, and I really enjoyed it.
You're excited for It Takes Two?
I am. I'm really excited for that. A Way Out is going to be, I think, a really strange mark in Hazelight's game catalog, because it's fine, but it's so not as good as Brothers, and definitely doesn't look as interesting as It Takes Two. So I'm
but I do think A Way Out got them on the map more than they had ever been before, and they got them more.
Yeah.
It's going to be seen as the point where at least I started getting on them. But
yeah, agreed. I mean, it got me to play them first. So
same, exactly. I think that's a lot of people. Yeah.
It's like It Takes Two takes a lot from A Way Out as far as gameplay structure and stuff, but It Takes Two is doing it on steroids.
My number 7 is Shantae and the Seven Sirens. I'm not really going to say anything more about it. Me and Jeff already talked about it.
7 Sirens?
7 for 7 Sirens. Let's go. All right, Jake.
Poetic. My number 7 is Hylix 2. We talked about before. Great art style, great music. It is like I said, a surreal, psychedelic, turn-based JRPG where you have a party and you're casting spells. And I think what's really cool about this game is that with surrealism, it's so out there, but it is conjuring things from like recognizable symbols and iconography from someone's subconsciousness. And when I think about video games, I think maybe besides the platformer, which there are also platforming sections in this game, the JRPG is probably like the most like recognizable form of video games, at least like in a collective, unconscious kind of way. And I think what's interesting about this game is just like how absurd and abstract the visuals are. You can still understand what you're doing, like how things work despite this absurdity. And I think that it's a really interesting exploration, I think, of the JRPG genre.
Like it builds off of that just muscle memory you already have, basically.
Yeah, or it's like what I'm doing here is so weird, or like this whatever this thing is called is like complete nonsense to me, but I understand like intuitively what this is used for, despite how absurd everything is. And the plot itself it's a pretty straightforward like RPG quest, but it's a lot like plots you see in Dragon Quest or Zelda.
I'm surprised anything about this game is being described as straightforward. But
I don't believe you.
But really, really interesting game. And it was fun, too, to play an RPG that's like 12 hours long. I think the
Yeah,
way
that is cool.
Yeah.
Its development, the way the game, its arc is very satisfying.
Yes.
Number 7, Astro's Playroom. Let's go. Everyone who knows me knows I love some good 3D platformers. We don't get enough. This is a good one. Like I said, it's crazy that this is technically a tech demo, but it's so good.
I would have paid money for that.
Yeah.
Man. I mean,
Oh,
that was
100%.
like that is
I would've-
just. It's almost like, I mean, it could be bigger. Like, it could be bigger, but there's something to be said for there is no fat on that.
No.
It is just
No,
tight
like you
and
said,
great. You know?
There's no fat on it, and it feels complete enough. Like you said, it could be longer. You know, in our mind, it is a tech demo, so we keep that in mind as far as the link goes. But it has 4 like worlds that have separate, kind of separate levels and stuff. Those feel really good. They're different. The suits that you put Astro in are very different and make good use of the controller functions and all that. They're charm out the wazoo in that game, just with the music and the visuals and just how the little bots are just running around and how cute they are. Just all the Easter eggs are just very fun to find and all that, and figuring out what's that. Oh, that's it. And that final boss is very fun.
So good.
Yeah, and because it's the only boss, it makes you think how good that was. It's like, man, kind of wish there were more.
Yeah.
Definitely, I want more from this team. I love Astrobot Rescue Mission for the PSVR. You know, I knew they would. You know, they probably go to a non-VR at some point. I'm glad to see that their talents carry over to that. Now, Sony just needs to give them a full game.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
I'm excited.
Of course, it's right when he goes to talk. It's right when he goes to talk. That's when it happens. All right,
Yeah,
sorry.
I know.
Go ahead, Will.
Okay, number 6 I'm saying is Super Mario Odyssey.
A
So
little low, but I'll take
Yeah, it's
it.
a little low, but
no, I really did love this game. I think so. I don't think I've ever played a 3D Mario game, actually. So this was super exciting for me and pretty surprising as well that I liked it as much as I did. But yeah, I think it really didn't take me too long to understand how special it was and just how much pure fun it was. Yeah, I mean, and obviously it didn't hurt that I could play it wherever. So I think this became the game that I played a lot of on the go. And I think that helped a lot with, you know, just me enjoying it. So I definitely enjoyed Mario Odyssey. It's funny you say it's a little low because I just took my top 5 from my Facebook list that I made earlier, and I was like, crap, I forgot Mario Odyssey. I should have put that higher. So I just made it number 6. But
so it's not real, Jeff. It's lies. Okay, it's just
it's
wherever
somewhere
you
in the
want it
top
to be,
6.
Jeff. That's where it actually.
Oh, fuck, number 1. Good job, Will.
My number 6, Cyberpunk 2077.
Still pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. It's one of those things I can't really deny how much fun I had for the majority of this game, even though it was not what I wanted it to be. You know, we talk about me wanting it to be way more of an RPG player's paradise, which is what it seemed like it was going to be. I was not role playing. I was not immersed in that way, but so much about this game, I think, is phenomenal. I think the open world from a design perspective, like I've said a bunch on our Spoilercast and stuff, it's probably my favorite designed open world in a video game ever. The interactability with that world leaves something to be desired, but the actual driving through that world, there are just so many little pockets of that map that I will never ever see because it's buried and there's highways going up, giant skyscrapers, and these it just feels like an enormous city that you'll never see all of in a real way. It feels like a real city in that way. And early on in this game, I was still kind of in the honeymoon phase, but I got up at 5 a.m. to play this game one morning. I was really, really into this game for a while. So, I can't deny all that stuff. And there are definitely moments that I think are very strong. It's just the reason why usually when I talk about this game is negative is just because I thought this was a shoo-in for being at minimum number 3 on my list, absolute minimum number 3, but just not the case. But yep,
That's how it goes. My number 6 is Risk of Rain 2, which is a sequel to a 2013 roguelike. Roguelikes are weird for me, where some of them will really grab me and others I just bounce off of. I put like almost 100 hours into the first Risk of Rain, and this sequel does take a lot from that first game, but it also adds a whole new dimension to it. And I mean that literally, because the first game is 2D and this sequel is 3D. And I think the way it translates a lot of the stuff from that first game to a 3D setting is really good, really well done. And it completely changes the way you would approach like that game and that style of game. And on top of like the stuff that they took from the first game, there is a lot of new content, and so it really is a buffet of content, and it's just a lot of fun. I'm hoping to play with friends, maybe, because you can have 4 people in a session, and it's a fun game. It's a roguelike in the way where as time goes on, the game gets harder. It's not like, if you spend like 15 minutes in the first stage, the gameplay will be on medium difficulty. It's like the difficulty is always increasing no matter how long you spend in a stage, and so it can get really kind of almost like bullet hell and chaotic in a way. And then you can have a setup of items that in a roguelike way kind of alter your abilities, to where you hit a button and just like 15 things will happen and you somehow kill like 20 enemies at once, and you're like, okay, it's a game that almost wants to break itself, and it's a lot of fun.
Sweet.
Right. My number 6 is Paper Mario: The Origami King. Let's go. Yeah, this game surpassed my expectations of it. If you looked at me talk about Paper Mario as a series, I would say haven't had like a really great one since the second one, Thousand Year Door. That was like early 2000s. Super Paper Mario was okay, and the last two, well, the DS one, 3DS one was not great. I guess I have nothing about Color Splash, but it seemed like it was particularly great. But I think it's the best one since, at least the one that I played since Thousand Year Door, in ways that are different. For this game, it's mainly about the writing in the actual world. While this has a battle system in it, in the game, it's not particularly great as far as the random battles go, and you can easily avoid them. You don't get too much for it, so you don't really need to, which is definitely a big criticism. But with that same system, the boss fights are fantastic, and you're excited to get to those and see what the mechanics going to be for all that. But except writing is fantastic, the characters are great. You just love to see these characters interact, or the way they kind of spoof like Mario stuff, like with these villains and the dynamics between these characters. Like you'll go to you'll find like a coffee shop, and it's just a bunch of Bowser's goons, and the barista or whatever is kind of like, just come in, Mario. There's no Bowser's minions and Mario here. They're just people, and that kind of stuff. It's like a truce in this place, which is just fun. Like I said, character's great, and reason I was able to like rate this game as high, because I went into it thinking more of as it went on like an action adventure kind of thing. You just exploring these levels, finding the secrets, doing the whatever platforming stuff, instead of less like an RPG like the older games, which people want it to be more that way. I think it excels at that. Just a very charming game all the way around, and I really recommend it if you just kind of want to like a chill, just kind of fun game.
Nice.
Cool. Number 5 for me is Ghost of Tsushima. So, I mean, I feel like I've spoken a lot about this, and since y'all haven't played it, I guess we can't have much of a conversation. But it is exactly what I expected from a solid open world game from Sony. The setting is something really special, and I do think that the combat is actually really great as well. But it wasn't, I don't know, it still didn't wow me, I guess, in the same way as something like God of War or Last of Us or whatever, or even really Spider-Man in some ways. Mm-hmm. So it's still definitely number 5. I think it's a great game, but I did think that the hype around it for like Game of the Year, or even like the people's whatever, the Game Awards version of the People's Choice Awards or whatever. I thought that was so odd that so many people loved it so much in that way. So I do think it's a great game, but I definitely wouldn't put it in my top 3 or top 2 or anything like that. But it's definitely, I know that y'all aren't really into those types of games, but I would be interested in what y'all thought about it at the very least. So maybe when it gets cheaper or something, that would be fun to see.
Yeah, part of me is a little interested about Ghost of Tsushima, but I do know it's a game I will get tired of probably 20 hours in.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it does do a good job of like not forcing you into doing any side quests or anything like that, which I appreciated. I did anyway because I got the platinum, of course, but but you can beat it. You can beat it pretty quickly.
Yep. So that's the real reason Will doesn't play that many modern games. Yeah. He's platinuming everything, which is, I mean, he's getting all the meat off the bone. He's getting all the meat off the bone. My number 5. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Darby Hallman is saying that the PS5 tech demo, Astro's Playroom, that I didn't even really play. I just watched Jeff play. But that is my number 5, ladies and gentlemen. It's over Cyberpunk 2077. I don't know. I feel like I experienced that game very, my experience with that game is number 5 right here. I mean, it's that game that I think is just really, really good. Even watching Jeff play through most, so I went back and played some of it, but even just that, I could tell just how good the mechanics and everything were, and how much fun and how tight and everything that game was. I think that studio, Asobi, whatever the name of the studio is, one of the most exciting game devs right now, just period. This is one of the ones I'm most excited about their future, and I want them to have more things. But I legitimately think this game, even a tech demo, is good enough to be it's one of the best games of the year. Easy
money.
Easy. And
my number 5 is Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Get out.
It's in the top 5. I'll take top 5. I'll tell you what I can get.
Yes, I have not played Final Fantasy VII before, so this is my first time. That's probably really my first Final Fantasy game that I played to completion.
Nice.
And I was, of course, I'm interested in Final Fantasy VII because it's Darby's favorite game, and it's also a timeless game that is so important to a lot of people who are in their 20s and 30s. And so I was really interested in the legacy of Final Fantasy VII. And after playing it, I totally get why this game, maybe it's not quote unquote the best Final Fantasy, but it is, I think, the most important. And yeah. I get why. I get why people like Midgar, why people like characters like Cloud and Tifa and Aerith, why those characters are timeless and iconic. But what I really like about Final Fantasy VII Remake in particular is that it's, when you remake a game, questions of intent kind of naturally arise. Why are you remaking this? What is, the purpose of this remake? What is its relationship to this original work? And Final Fantasy VII Remake, I think, plays with the legacy of Final Fantasy VII in a very interesting way. And I think that just takes it to another level. I think that makes this remake more important and more timeless than if it was just a one-to-one remake of that first act of the original game. So I'm really looking forward to however many parts there are in this remake series.
Touching on that, I think something that we brought up when we were talking about it earlier this year, Final Fantasy VII is one of the only properties on Earth you could do this with. You could do something like this with. Because it needs to be something that people are emotionally resonant enough and nostalgic for. But it's also, it's such a mystical thing that it's oh, they're going to do the remake, but what are they going to do? Whatever. And it's the way they're able to toy with the this is the same, but this is different. This is the same. It's and just the whole nature. I do kind of love the meta-ness about the plot ghosts, basically, and how it's very clearly a direct metaphor for the creators of this game remaking this thing that they made 20-something years ago, and fans, expecting it to be the same and not whatever. But as an artist, if you're doing this, if you're coming back to this, you're going to want to do things that you hadn't done before. Exactly. You're going to want to spread your wings and make this thing into something bigger. And I think the plot ghost thing and that whole thing is an awesome metaphor for that clash. You know,
I love the
creative
plot
clash. It's cool. Yeah.
My number 5, Ori and the Will of the Wisp. Kind of feels bad putting this low, but with the games ahead of it,
Yeah, that seems a little low there, Jeffrey.
it'll make sense. But yeah, this game is fantastic. Metroidvania. Another Metroidvania type game in this, but kind of like Shantae, where it's not as hardcore, I'd say, as like the Hollow Knights of the world and all that. It's kind of more in the middle, I'd say.
Yeah,
But-
because it definitely still gets pretty rough there for a while. But
Yes, definitely has some
not-
challenge
yeah.
to it. But one thing that definitely separates Ori from the other ones is the escape scenes or the chase scenes that you have throughout there, where Ori is this tiny character in her world full of these gigantic monsters, and those kind of things like help prove that like Ori's underpowered compared to these as hell, but you have these that it just makes it intense.
Yes.
And they pull it off so well where you need to get these kind of perfect. You're always, when those scenes are happening, you're just like the edge of your seat the whole time, like, oh god, no, I've got to start over.
sense of scale between the two, and like you never feel like a badass. It's supposed to be like you barely got out of here with the skin of your teeth. You're this tiny little furry thing.
Yeah, and we mentioned the art style and music, so I'm not going to go into that kind of stuff, but just the additions of like the weapons and stuff with the sword and the hammer are fantastic additions to separate it from the original Ori. I think this is better than the original Ori overall for sure, but the additions do make it stronger. And yeah, just a very fantastic game, which I would call this, just the way people are talking, the most underappreciated game of the year.
100%.
Because when you look at all these people's endeared lists of these things, Ori's usually not even in the top 10, and that's just kind of mind-blowing to me. That's not even up there.
Yeah, I think this is far and away probably. Well, I mean, except for maybe Celeste is like the only like 2D side scroller type game that I maybe will like more than this. I just think this is so tight in just the different areas and everything. And every single time you get a power up, it's at the perfect time, and it's like it completely changes the way you traverse the game. You get a power up for this certain area, and then you go back to previous areas, and you're like, or as soon as you get a power up, a lot of times you're like, oh shit, I can now get into that. You know, like
Yeah, and
It's
those
just
power-ups
really-
like just make exploring older areas you might be having to go for just easier.
Yes.
Like you're getting this fast where like,
Like,
I had trouble with this the first round, now it's like boop, 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 I'm done.
Yep. I legitimately kind of want to replay that game at some point, which I don't think I've ever really said for these type of games before, but I might. Like, that game's so good.
I think I'm gonna get the first one on Switch here soon. All right, let's see what number is this for. Number 4 for me is Pyre. So
Nice.
I never picked up Pyre when it came out because I was like, I don't know, I love Transistor and Bastion, but this looks pretty weird. And I definitely regret doing that now because I freaking loved Pyre. I think the gameplay is, I mean, it's definitely fun. It's definitely weird. But the narrative completely makes it. I mean, it makes narrative sense, even though it is kind of strange. The characters that you meet on the journey are awesome. Even though they aren't fully voice acted, the just reading their stories and learning more about them on this like Oregon Trail fantasy road trip is really, really fun. And it was just really interesting how much I grew to like these characters that, like I said, never really have a voice. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's Jacob, you've played Pyre,
Yeah, I have.
but you two haven't, or you have?
I started it. I really need to continue it. But
Well, a major part of the game is kind of like deciding on who gets to be free, I guess. So you like lose one of your party members each time that you win. So I think that really set up like an interesting balancing act as like, man, I really like this character, so I want him or her to be free, but man, I really like using this character too.
And
So-
I want to get to know them more, but is it
Yeah,
time
yeah,
for me to
because-
let them go? It's such
Right.
I think a question that you don't really get a lot in narrative games. And
Right.
It's, oh, yeah, Pyre's so good.
because it can make you feel like you're not hearing all their story if you let them go too soon. So it's just it's cool because you kind of get to feel how they feel about being let go at this time, and whether or not you want to honor their wish or if you want to keep them a little more. It's just a really great narrative game. Even if you I don't know, even if you don't feel super strongly about the gameplay, I think it's definitely worth looking into. Because honestly, the gameplay isn't really the main thrust. At least it wasn't for me. So,
My number 4 is 13 Sentinels. They have talked enough about the game. It's just, I really do think this is a game I want a lot of people to check out. Because even if, I mean, it's a very anime type game, and the story is about, like, you know, teenagers piloting mechs to fight kaiju. And, like, it sounds insane, but, like, even if that's not your thing, like, it's not really my thing necessarily, I think the way the story is told is just so innovative, and I've never had a game tell me a story in this type of fashion, and I just have so much admiration for how hard this must have been to write, and all that. And I really love the characters. I think part of, I mean, number 4 in this year is still very, very strong, but I think some of the things that knocks against it, I think there's some weird male gazy type stuff in this game for sure. There's some, like, there's way too many of the female characters, like, their only, like, driving force is being obsessed with a guy who doesn't care about them. It was like there was one character like that, I'm like, okay, that's gonna be the only character, and then, like, the next 3 girls all had the same thing. I'm like, yeah, all right. But that being said, there's also a lot of, like, relationships that I thought were really impactful. There's a kind of sort of non-binary character in this game that I actually think was done pretty well. I was, like, waiting for the other shoe to drop the entire time. Like, this is about to get real bad. But it's like, when it went through, I was like, oh no, this was actually kind of respectful and touching in some ways. Like, I'm not going to say it's perfect, but it was something like, I can't think of another, like, non-binary character I saw in the game like that. Like, it's someone that's, like, I mean, it's kind of a, like, skirt line. You just have to see. But, like,
Right. Yeah.
that was like, there was a bunch of things like that where it was, like, interesting character moments and stuff that, like, I don't normally see tackled in the game. And just the overarching thing is just the way that they handle telling that narrative and how batshit insane it is, and how many crazy, like, crazy turns. You think about the craziest, like, twist you have in a sci-fi movie or game or something. There's, like, 13 of those in this game. It's absurd. It's a lot of fun.
My number 4 is Signs of the Sojourner, which I've talked a lot about on this podcast. So make it really brief, just completely innovative in the way it presents interactive conversation, and just such a really good game that I hope is, like, secretly influential for more games. Really, just such a good game. It is in the Black Lives Matter bundle on itch. So if you purchased that back in the summer, you have it.
We have it.
Good to know.
Good to know, Jacob.
Yeah, that's good to know.
It was so good that when I beat it, I immediately started playing it again. So
Nice.
really good game.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm interested in that one.
Yeah. Number 4 for me, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. Oh boy, this game, baby. Like I mentioned, a 10-year-old updated port for a Wii game, but it updated all the right things. The visuals, the character models in the original look bad. These look really good. They did some nice stuff, like allowing you to decide what clothes the people wear, because in the original, it did the whole, what armor you put on them, that's what they're wearing, no matter how fucking stupid they look. So I'm glad they fixed that. But as someone who played the other two, Xenoblade and the game after is X and 2, this is my favorite one for sure. I think it has the most tight in combat, and it's just from a kind of a simplicity standpoint, but also it does a bunch of crazy things with it, where each character doing completely different things, and different roles and all that, and trying to figure out as you level it up and what roles they play and what characters are the best, especially for different situations, was great. The story surpassed my expectations. Like, I knew it was Xenoblade and everything, so I knew it was going to get some crazy at some point, but the pace that everything just ramped up, like, it was kind of like a pretty simple thing in the beginning, but it just steadily ramped up in a very good way that not really often in JRPGs. Like, it ramped up steadily, where a lot of ones just kind of start out simple as this jump the shark randomly, like go from 3 to 10 at the flip of a hat. This one kind of did it steadily and all that.
It got to 10, but it just went through all the numbers.
It went past 10. It just did it steadily. Like, we went from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It just it went up steadily, and it was great. Definitely some most I will always remember, and the music is fantastic, and just the way they pick songs for different scenes. It's fantastic. And just going back to the settings is something I remembered, like just the visuals of it. It's fantastic. Like I'm curious to see what the original Wii version was like with some of this stuff. There's like one place in particular where it's like a snowy area, and it had these little like pillar type things. And then when nighttime came, because of the day-night cycle, the pillars just light up, and it's just this beautiful light that just all these lights going in the air, and it's just beautiful, man. It's one of those things like. I can't believe it's a Wii game, but it's also like, I can't believe this is a Switch game with how crazy the world design is and how beautiful it looks at the same time. Top tier
Awesome.
JRPG. Yeah, I'll say this as well. For here on out, my top 4 is like, most other years, any one of these would be my number 1.
I am fascinated to see the ordering of these next two.
All right, my number 3 is Celeste. Finally got around to playing. Oh, I actually... Thank you. I forgot to mention, I also did Platinum Pyre, and that was a rare occasion of it not killing me by the end. It was actually a delight to Platinum.
Good job, Pyre.
But
That's the first game that Will's actually likes. Every other game that he's played, he hates now because of
happy to delete. Yeah. No, Celeste. This was, let's see, I guess it was the second game I played on Switch. I was playing it and Super Mario Odyssey at the same time, and it was absolutely fantastic. I really fell in love with, I don't know, I think that, I guess that was just a great example of like dying not being a bad thing in a video game, and just like learning from your mistakes, I guess. And I really fell in love with that mechanic of just figuring out each screen by screen what I need to do. And the instantaneous like reviving in that game was just really delightful, I guess, just in how fast you kind of respawn and just get to try again no matter where you're at. So I really, really like Celeste. I thought some of the, like, I guess, allegory, that might even be a strong word, was a little heavy-handed and maybe a little cheesy in parts, but I understood what they were getting at, obviously, and appreciated it for what it was. But it was really the gameplay that stood out to me the most. So,
yeah. Cool. I'm not really going to talk about the next one. My number 3 is Ori and the Will of the Wisp. I purposely talked a lot about when Jeff did it so that we could move on, but phenomenal game.
Phenomenal.
Should be a game of the year. It's crazy the next year.
My number 3 is Animal Crossing New Horizons.
Mm-hmm.
I really had no idea how much I would have needed a game like this probably last year. It's a game that probably when I think back to 2020 and everything that's happened, I think Animal Crossing is the game that I will probably think of the most. I think it's the game that I think best represents this year. Especially like in the way that like a lot of us were in isolation, a lot of things were shut down, and I think Animal Crossing provided like a social space as well as like a sense of community, like action and engagement and like a routine. I think being outside, it was incredibly, incredibly important. And I could talk about Animal Crossing and on so many levels. But I think the one thing that really speaks to me about Animal Crossing New Horizons is how much I cared for like this community that I built and like all these animal villagers, which they're not like the most elaborate like NPCs ever, but it was fun to check in and talk to people every day and like kind of build like an outdoor, dining area for them, to make like a garden and like a resort place. It was a really special game, and I liked it a lot.
Right, my number 3, The Last of Us Part 2.
Boo.
That's what I would have predicted was number 3. Now, will I strangle Jeff is the question for the next 2, but we'll see.
Do I need to sleep with one eye open? It's the question going forward. Like I said, any of these 4 would be my top game most other years. Last of Us Part 2 is the exception. There was a lot of worry going into this game after the original Last of Us. Like, does this game need to be made? Will they be able to follow up? Well, will it just feel like a retread? I'm glad they didn't listen to a bunch of people because everyone wanted a retread. I'm glad they didn't go that route. Mm-hmm. They made some bold choices here, and like I said earlier, I think it works out killing Joel pretty early and you have Ellie go on this quest for revenge, and just making you play as Joel's killer and stuff, and making you sympathetic to that character, and just them doing a bold choice of kind of making Ellie look more like a monster as the game goes on. I know there are no good people here, and that's kind of a big thing about it, generally. But it is really the gameplay excellent. I know everyone, including us, goes to the story, but a big reason me and a lot of people love this game is just the gameplay is just really well done. You have those tense moments, and I'm glad. You can have those. You can either stealth to kill people, do the firefights, or do what I did multiple times because I suck at shooters, and just get it caught and then run for my freaking life to the exit. And
but
I think it just works.
I think what was kind of so cool about that game is it was a struggle and a puzzle enough to get through the environments that if I got through the environments and didn't interact with anyone, or even if I sprinted and got out, I didn't feel like I cheated the game or anything. It was I felt like, okay, I just had to run for my life, and she got away or whatever. It didn't, Yeah,
I think the way the level design is built and all that, it's not like a narrative dissonance type thing to where Ellie's at and who she is and everything and the situation you're in, it kind of fits narratively for the most part, no matter which way you do it. If you stealth and kill them, makes sense to do. If you sometimes firefight it out, I guess it technically doesn't make sense Ellie would beat all those people, but it's a video game. And also you escaping and running from them when you're so outnumbered in these situations also just makes sense narratively, because Ellie's just one girl, or Abby's just one girl, so it makes sense. It's something special.
Cool. Definitely agree with that. Number 2 for me is going to be Detroit Become Human. So this is the game I played right after beating Last of Us Part 2, and it was a salve upon my wounds that Last of Us left me. It was just, I don't know, it was just such a good story that I was able to really invest in, and making that many decisions on because all your characters can die in that game, so just trying to figure out what's the best for these characters, questioning some philosophical questions about what life is. I don't know, it was just a really interesting game for me, and one that really hooked me in. I was gonna say something else about Detroit, but I can't remember right now. So, yeah, Detroit's number 2. I definitely did get that platinum as well. That was probably oh my gosh, that was a really frustrating one. Not because of any difficulty, but because it required. I never platinum games that require more than one playthrough, but I made a special case for this game. And I had to replay the last 3 chapters 6 times or something. It was obnoxious.
No. I'm out.
But but it was good. It was good.
No, thank you.
I'm instantly out of those platinums.
No, thank you.
That's why I only have 2, including Astro's Playroom. Easy platinum for you people out there.
That's
Very
right.
true. Very true. My number 2, The Last of Us Part 2. Everyone knows the order now, but yeah,
I knew the order.
Everyone knows. If you vaguely know me, you know. But yeah, it is absolute insanity. The Last of Us Part 2 would not be my game of the year because it's phenomenal. It is really in so many ways. I think it has very, 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 very few flaws. It vibes with me so well in the sense that it's way more of a character study than it is a story arc with with beats that rhyme and go to, it's not more of a traditional story. It's more of a these are these characters, these are what they're doing, this is what they're doing, and you analyze why they're doing the thing. It's a lot more of just zooming in on these characters, and I understand why that doesn't sit well with a lot of people. It's a game that you have to think about more to get the overarching message. It doesn't beat you over the head with this is the point of this game. It's more of something that you take away a lot of different things from it, and the more you think about it, the more you get out of it, if that makes sense. So it's just a type of narrative that I really personally love, and I like it better than the first game, which is really, really surprising. I did not expect that to happen. So it's very good.
My number 2 is Kentucky Route Zero.
Nice.
Which I've spoken about a lot. I did play it before the whole COVID pandemic, and so I feel like now it would be even more, I think, resonating now than before. But I do have a quote here that I think really does capture, I think, the tone of this game. It goes, but that's the way it goes. The unsteady steadying the unsteady. The unsteady steadying the unsteady. There's probably a $5 bill somewhere just floating up and down the river from jar to musician to jar to musician, then an internal ferry of good intentions. So, yeah, really good game. Really phenomenal writing.
Right. Sorry, I'm just writing something real quick.
So the Chiefs won, but Patrick Mahomes had to go out with a concussion.
That's not good. My number 2 is Persona 5 Royal.
Woo!
We'll talk about that later, Darby. So yeah, Persona 5 Royal, added this in there. It's Xenoblade is like a remake in some ways, close to that with the stuff they changed, at least visually and stuff. This is more of definitely more of the updated port, which is the added things in there. But added on here anyway. Game's great. Music's fantastic. As mentioned, the cast of characters you meet is absolutely amazing. The battle system is a lot of fun. The updates, from what it's one of those things where I'm kind of glad that I played at least some, as much as I did as Persona 5. So I could go in here kind of knowing a lot of what's different and kind of appreciating what I immediately tell, like, oh, this is different, and be able to bring that to the podcast and all that. But what I did, I think what they added and changed or whatever is really well done. It a lot of good quality of life stuff to make it easier for, like, if Will wanted to give it a shot, just make it an easier transition, because there's a lot there that can overwhelm you for sure. And like I said, the additions to Royal I really like. I've read somewhere, I'm not going to say what stuff is, but the ending to, people really hate the ending to Royal and much prefer the original ending. Like, I don't see why in particular, if I'm being honest, because to be honest, like, it's mainly the final cutscene. It's not that much different from the original, from what I understand.
So we're talking about before the expanded content,
like literally
area,
the last thing after I do
like,
my stuff.
Yeah.
After I did the Royal stuff, like the actual last cutscene,
yeah, okay.
sounds like a different, but people hate it for some reason. I personally don't get it. But like I said, Kasumi and Maruki are great additions. I love them to death. Honestly, thinking about it, I retroactively put in Kasumi in runner-up for best character in there because I ended up loving her the most of the end. What they did with her is really well. I wish she was in there more throughout the whole game, but narratively, it works. I know it's because, then they got to rewrite everything. But the way they do it and the way they use her in the Royal content is, I think, well done and worth not having her throughout the whole game, or at least playable.
We knew you'd love it, Jeff. It was weird as hell that I was the one of us that had played it for years.
Yep.
So it's like you had not. That was weird as hell.
And I think it's a testament to, like, how much I love these characters and just the general stuff with the game, where I didn't finish this that long ago, a couple months ago at this point, and I'm instantly ready to jump into Persona 5 Strikers. I know gameplay is different, but it is going back into that world for like another 30, 40 hours, it sounds like, at least.
Yeah. Oh, it's phenomenal. It's a great game.
Yep.
All right, Will, game of the year.
What a surprise. It's Last of Us Part 2. I don't have anything more to say about this. I just really, really loved it. It certainly has its problems, but it would be silly for me to put anything else above this.
Silly.
Silly.
Foolish.
Except for Mario Odyssey. That'd be okay.
Okay.
All right, well, Will, if you need to bounce, we can finish
I'll
this
hear
up.
what y'all's are real quick.
Okay.
I think I know them, but
Yeah, I mean, well, you know me. It's can't even give me some fake thing to say. I can't even think of a joke answer.
Avengers.
We all knew.
Conker's bad third day for the 20th year in a row for me. Let's go.
My game of the year is Anthem. my game of the year spot. Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Should I just jump in here too? Well, since
Yes,
it's mine?
because I'm so happy, Jeff.
I struggled. There were literally times where all 4 of my top 4 I was considering for my top
Yeah,
spot.
I really didn't know how that top 4 would shake out.
Yeah.
Order wise. Yeah, so Jeff, I want to hear more from you, honestly.
Okay, so yeah, I felt like again they were all vying for the spot, but I think I was able to get Xenoblade at 4 and Last of Us 3, somewhat earlier, and it was just coming down to Final Fantasy and Persona. Reason I gave Final Fantasy the nod is there are definitely lower lows. There's definitely more padding and all that kind of stuff, despite being a shorter game for sure, and I can point to those. But the highs for the game, I think I mentioned this when you made me choose between Final Fantasy VII and Last of Us back in like July. Mm-hmm. The highs for that game are just, for me personally, above most other games, to where that just kind of made the difference. If it was a standpoint where it was just mainly the story carrying it, then I would definitely give it to Persona.
Yeah.
But the combat in Final Fantasy VII is also just fantastic. It's like much better than I expected. Like for what we said earlier with the materia system, the way weapons work, the switching between the characters, and them all being so different and so fun. Yeah. Just all that kind of stuff. And again, admittedly, part of it is just everything surrounding that ending and the discussion we've had there. Definitely probably take it to the next level for me.
Some of those fun, like I said, we went from the most fun post-game discussion with Final Fantasy VII to the most exhausting with The Last of Us Part 2. Like,
and it's just making it so that's probably the most excited I immediately was for a sequel after getting done playing a game.
See, this is all validating for me because, like, I cannot look at this with a level, like, unbiased head. I just can't do it. So obviously, every moment here, like so many of my favorite gaming moments of all time came from this one game. I mean, I was like just obsessed because of course I was going to be. But to hear you put it number one with this like stiff competition is pretty validating for me, and I'm so happy. I'm so happy that other people are getting to experience the just like off-kilter, wacky weirdness that is Final Fantasy VII. It's just
wait till they see Genesis, right? Don't put Genesis.
God, I hope they never see Genesis. Golden Saucer, though.
Yeah. Jacob's here. He played the game, so you're like these fucking weebs.
It's a really good game.
Well, Jacob, what is the Nerds at Large official game of the year? You're the one that makes
sure. Yeah, please. It's Hades, like no question. Just such a great game where I think there's no weakness to it. Everything about it, I think, works together and strengthens it as a game. And I love how it uses its roguelike structure and mechanics to tell its narrative. I think it's so well done. And I like, too, how even the Greek mythology theme is not just like an aesthetic. The game conveys, I think, a lot of themes from Greek mythology and Greek tragedy, especially in the around fate and like how much control we have over our fate. It's a game that very much it's like you may not control like the larger circumstances around you, but you can make choices in your life to come to a comfortable to a better place. And I think that's a message that I found incredibly resonating in 2020. So Hades, just such a good game.
Hades is definitely on the top of my list of games I wish I could have gotten to this year.
It's very well done. I could, even with it not necessarily being my type of thing, I just can't. I mean, you saw that it was number 9 for me, but it was in almost every category that we said because like the individual things it does knocks it out of the damn park.
And you added in when you mentioned earlier, like from an objective standpoint, this should be much higher. But
I think from an objective standpoint, it's probably game of the year. I mean, it's like game of the year or number 2 or something. But
yeah, I think with like smaller indie games like Hades, smaller indie games have been getting more, I think, mainstream attention.
Yeah.
And, you had Celeste and Outer Wilds and Disco Elysium even.
Yeah.
And I think Supergiant was overdue for like a breakout success. I think with Pyre, like the whole gameplay of it probably turned a lot of people away. A roguelike is a lot more appealing to popular interests. And so I think it was time for them to have that really big breakthrough success.
Yeah, agreed. I think Darby and I have been saying on the podcast for years. Supergiant's secretly one of the best developers.
Oh yeah, it comes to, they never just make a normal video game. They this is the closest thing to like copying a different style they have done. But even within the roguelike style, this is so unique and innovative. So it's great. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was our 2020 best of. So sorry that it was 3 hours and 13 minutes, but I had a blast. I hope everyone else had fun. It was very good. So thank you guys so much. Peace.